What's up, my dudes? Howdy, fellers. Oh, man, sometime this whole streaming thing, like trying to set it up and change stuff, god dang, it's so darn tedious. It just, ugh, it's super tedious, man. Hmm. I'm feeling, reasonably talkative today. Hang on one second. Huh. You're always in here first somehow. Let me know if do you hear any like TTS? Like text to speech? Oh, what's up, Chuck Norris, my dude? I was trying to set up text to speak, yeah, text to speech, but I wanted to see if I could do it for free first, because yeah, you can pay money for it, and they also have a free version. So I figured I would try that, see if I could get it to work. Text to speech. It's yeah, no, it's not TTS. Say it's exclamation say or exclamation says. One of those two. I could I could just look right. Oh, hell yeah. I wasn't sure if that was working. It's exclamation say, actually. That I look. Nothing much though, man. I mean, I definitely wanted to get that working. I can hear the TTS. I was just wanting to know if it actually went through the stream to you guys, because I can hear it. Uh, which is nice because it's kind of a pain in the ass to like constantly be having to read all the chats. You know what I'm saying? It's more like a conversation when I have the TTS up. Okay. Yeah, I mean there was always that chance. I might be able to. It may just because I need to tweak it right quick. Power kit? Is that what you said? Like there's a lot of premiums. Hmm. Yo, what up, Robert? Yeah, I mean I like the TTS. I can hear it, so it helps me kind of respond to you guys' stuff, and I will respond, by saying that's how I'll respond because they're speaking to me. But I did kind of want to have the TTS so that when you guys actually want to say something or instead of doing call-ins, I figured I would do the because I'm gonna do it like members only, where you just got to do like the $2 membership, and then because I think I have to get a premium service to get it. But I figured, if everybody kicks in $2, out of like the 30 people that chat, everybody would be able to use TTS, which I think is it would be pretty sick because I can set it up for just power chat. Okay, power chat. Gotcha. Word. That's what's up. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do it without paying first, but I figured I'd do the memory thing. The- Yeah, there's another one. I think that Blurp there, it's like a Twitch thing, a Twitch add-on, and they have a bunch of them too. Actually, the coolest one that I saw was like the Master Chief. Shit was dope. It was sick, man. But like I'm just using my system TTS, so it's basically just like my MacBooks built in. Which is, nowadays with these MacBooks, I actually did a duplicate or a duplicate of my own voice. They do, because you got like Kick, their chat is pretty dope where you can add like, has the Kick bot. Like they all have a really robust set of stream features. And YouTube, it doesn't have the stream features. It has like the monetization features. They make it to where you can make money off of everything, but there's really no stream features to speak of. And oh, Power Chat's free, huh? I'll have to look into that. But I think that's definitely like where I want to go with it next because do like all the stream events, which is just like people when they follow, subscribe, and super chat and shit. I'll do that. TTS. But, yeah, YouTube. Yeah, it is kind of lame. But I mean, you can change it and you can add stuff on, but you kind of got to go in depth. Like you can't just sign up or log in and then boom, it's on. Nah. You got to like put in API keys. You got to like kind of have somewhat of a knowledge when it comes to coding and how programs work and shit. Actually, there's one more that I seen earlier today. It's called speech chat, and it's a browser source. I'm gonna see if that works. Maybe it does. Because I've seen a lot of places recommending it. It's free, but doesn't seem to be worth a shit. Man, there's not really a whole lot going on today, huh? I mean, when I noticed. I can set this up. Is for me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's on. Got it pulled up. Got the view count in. Put the TTS on because it is on the speed chat. And it uses all the same chat voices as I already had set up. But if I can get it to go through the speech or go through the stream, that would be dope. I think it's fixing to come on. Type exclamation mark speak. Try that. Chuck Norris, if you do exclamation speak before your message, it should do it. Did you guys hear any of that? Because it did speak, the speech chat one. You, did you hear it? Just wondering. I mean, it's if you can hear it, then it actually works. If not, it's just the same as the other one where it's just so that I can hear it. That's whack. Maybe I can do a browser source. Here, yeah, let me try that real quick. I'll add a browser because it's a browser thing, the speech chat. Yeah, that see if I can do that right quick. 1 second. See if I can do this right quick. Yeah, yeah, that's how it should be. I'm just trying to set up a TTS service. Sec. uh, Maybe I don't think I'm not sure if that works. That's lame. Well, I'm trying to do speech to text, man. I like set up like three different things, and they're all I can hear them, but you guys can't. No, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, uh, oh well, it is what it is. Lame, whatever. I was hoping to have that shit set up, man, because I tried like five different ways to set it up. No luck, none. And I set up all these overlays and shit just cause. Finally did. Oh well, it's being a little bitch. That sucks, man. Like, what's the point of adding all that shit and like having it included in all these different services, but it doesn't actually go through the stream? And they kind of warn, like, it's difficult to get it to come out the other end of the stream, but they have an instruction set for it. Wasn't able to make it work, so it's whatever. But like I was telling them, I wanted to probably gonna do like a TTS, the premium TTS, so that it goes through the stream, but just have it for members only. 'Cause, honestly, I don't want just any swinging dick that plops into the chat, or that watches the show for 20 minutes, then they can subscribe and go into the chat. And like last week, a couple of assholes were doing that. They were in the chat just saying stupid shit and spamming and whatnot. Whereas if I make it the member, I think it's like $2, but and that's I think for the month. And I want to set it up so you can TTS any message. I use that social stream ninja. Uh, for it has a TTS thing built in. I mean, I've been tinkering with it for like 3 or 4 hours, to be honest with you. So I mean, I've had like 20 different windows open. It is what it is. Like I said, I can hear it at least, so I don't have to fucking squint and stare at the chat, to see what you guys are saying, which is nice. Like I do like that. But I like the TTS, like how Nick has it set up, because it's almost like it's like somebody uh recommended the call-ins, like phone calls. And I was thinking, well, if you have a decent text to speech setup, people shouldn't have to call. They should be able to just type it out. and that would be dope. I mean, and well, it's the fact that it's overarching. Anybody that's watching the stream on whatever platform they're on, regardless, everybody hears uh, the TTS. I think that's the point of it anyway. And also, fucking around with phones and stuff. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing it, but it's just a lot of work. And then being on the phone with somebody, that's a little weird, which actually Rumble, they have a feature where you can leave messages, voice messages, and which is sick, man. Like, and I actually, the Nightbot used to have that in the thing that, the message that he repeats every 10 or 15 minutes. And it was basically saying go to Rumble and you can leave voice chats that are like, 30 seconds or a minute long, basically questions or whatever. And that I can do them on stream and shit, which I thought was pretty cool. But there's a lot going on, and you kind of have to do things one at a time, or you get overwhelmed. Like I only add one new thing like a week. And it take like a week to get that down and understood, and then after a week, I'll add another thing. But I'm kind of lagging because, or I'm not as advanced as everybody else. They've been streaming for years, and they've been doing that shit for years. Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I've been doing it one a week and just doing it really simple. No, it's no, in the I have it set up where it's exclamation say, SAY, but it didn't work. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass. And I did set it up on Streamlabs, but the only thing that sucks about that is it's only for stream events, like when somebody follows or super chats. And having the super chats TTS, that's pretty cool, but it's just like to have to spend money. Oh shit. I wonder like the stream social stream ninja. It's a sick ass multi-chat app, and I can add mods, I can add privileged users, members, and it has a lot of automated shit, but it's got 500 different settings and toggles. So it takes like 6 hours just to set the shit up right. It's wild, believe me. But it does make it to where I can do multiple different platforms all in the same chat. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I don't know why the Rumble chat isn't working. Oh, it is working. Never mind, never mind. Okay. That's uh that's all done then. I was thinking about earlier, you know, we're being ruled by these Jays, and we all know it. Everybody that comes in these streams, I know you guys already agree with me on that, but I was thinking about that's what I figured. Yeah, I'm not sweating it. Um, but these uh these Jays, it's like there's a pipeline to this where they come into your country, they set up their little enclave, and they all stick to themselves. They all stick to themselves or to each other, and they help each other, which I'm not going to really I don't think that's a bad thing. They stick together, but what they do is they give each other legs up, like the Amish, they take care of each other, but they help each other work up. Like they're all the billionaires, like Nick said, all the billionaires that do the AI, half of the ones that are doing the social media, Mark Zuckerberg, they're Jays. All of the ones that run these huge companies, besides like I don't know, I don't know if Jeff Bezos is, but him and Musk are like the only ones that aren't Jays. You have all these billionaire Jays. Because I was watching the Young Turks earlier, and they were talking about some of these runoff elections that just went down the other day. And they were talking about how APAC, they make these dummy shell packs so that they can donate without doing it under the APAC umbrella. Well, they get found out. People sniff them out, and oh, that's APAC, and they get ousted or outed. And they'll make two or three of those. Yo, what's up, Rob? Alex, what's up, dude? Yeah, they'll make two or three of those, and they'll just keep backing people. And, like, they have to influence our elections. They have to. Bro, and they have so much money. Like, how is it that you just have millions and like that's the problem with democracy. I'm just gonna have to start from like the basics to kind of this is actually gonna take a little while for me to explain. But our democracy, it's got flaws in it, for sure. We allow I think lobbying isn't a bad thing. Or it can be a bad thing, but it's also how we vote for politicians, but that's not the only way we influence politicians. We have lobby, we can lobby them, we can donate money. So you vote them in on whatever platform, you want them to, be voted in on. And then once they're in, you can't vote again. The only way to exert influence on them is with lobbying, is with calling their office and whatnot. Well, that leaves us our politicians can be influenced by rich people. Like none of us donate or lobby. We don't donate money to influence politicians. We don't have the money. And I don't think it's a bad thing that companies do it either. Like they always talk shit about the NRA lobbying. Well, the NRA is the gun lobby, and we all like to think that that is just some sort of an unchecked force is actually kind of stupid and low IQ. Because of course, there's an anti-gun lobby. Okay, the gun lobby, yeah, there's money going into it from the gun lobby, but there's also the anti-gun lobby who's pumping equally as much money in from the other side. So really, the gun lobby is just to reach a status quo neutral level. And it's the same thing with a lot of this lobbying. Now there is some that is like big pharma. Yeah, there's no counter force really, as far as I know, with big pharma, and there's no counter force with these Jays. And they have so much money, and their world is the American world. That's the world that these people live in. They live under America's umbrella. There's and under our sphere of influence. There's the Chinese sphere of influence, there's the Russian sphere of influence, but by and large, the world that the Jays do business in is the American world. They use the American banking system, and they lobby in our country, they lobby in Israel, and they do in Russia to some extent too, but really they only have money in dollars because they only deal in American businesses and shit. Well, they have so much fucking money that they're able, like, we're being ruled by people that are put in place by rich fucking Jays. Like we vote for these people, but in all actuality, we're being ruled. We're at the mercy of these billionaires and these people that are paying they're lobbying, they're paying the politicians. So like with that sick bastard, the one that was a Holocaust survivor, his son is going to take over. He's the one that people always talk about. He's the dark money and on the left. Uh, he's the one that everybody always brings up. What the hell is his name? Damn it! But he's always in. He's paying for prosecutors and shit, so they do soft on crime shit. But like these people, they don't they don't feel answerable to us. They feel answerable to these millionaires. Although since everybody has kind of woken up to it, they're not winning so much anymore because people aren't voting. That if people know that these motherfuckers are being bribed, basically nobody votes for them, so their money is wasted. So they can be defeated, but after the election, they're open for lobbying and all that shit. So they change, but we're being ruled by these motherfuckers at the pleasure of these rich sons of bitches. Like they're not going to go to Washington and worry about passing laws to help us when somebody's paying them not to do that shit, not to pass those laws. And it's our entire country, it's a democracy. So, we elect people, but that's not the only way that they're influenced. They're influenced by money too. So, they can only be elected from us voting for them, but that's not the only way they can be influenced. Like that's pretty much like that's the gist of it. The democracy, it's not like Russia where or other countries that have a more constrained way of electing people. It's not just a kind of a free and open, what's up, big head? Not a free and open election where people are lobbying and voting. But like I had thought I had put this away earlier. I was thinking about it. It was more complete. I don't know. I'm missing something. But, my point is we're being rules that we have to live by are being financed by these fucking billionaires. And I really don't have a problem with billionaires unless it's that specifically we're talking about. Yeah, I did. Yeah, unless it's that specifically we're talking about, then they start trying to make decisions for us. They start lobbying these politicians like, hey, don't get rid of abortion, don't advocate against abortion or whatever. That's just the example I use. But, they lobby these politicians and they can stop laws from changing. They can stop a lot from happening. And they're just like 20 fucking people. They're like a handful, but they have so much money that they can literally afford to buy out like all the elections in the whole fucking country. It's like a draft. They get to pick for every election what piece of shit scumbag J that they're going to elect for that position. Because that is what it is, man. There are so many of these people. They're not the rich ones. I'm not talking about the billionaires. I'm talking about the ones that actually run for office. Bro, like up north especially, there'll be like four people running for the office. And like one of them will have like a Muslim name. And then the other two, they have a regular name, seems like. Well, all of them but the Muslim are Jays. What the fuck, man? Like, why are we being ruled by these people? Why are they just like, and they'll be like pass or temple or synagogue, people that run a synagogue. They're not necessarily the preacher or whatever they call it, but they kind of take care of the property. Yeah, like the one that they were talking about on on breaking points, two of them were J's. One was the lady was named something Fine. The guy's name was like Daniel Biss. Last name was Biss. It's a Democrat election. Well, the Muslim woman loses. The Fine woman was the one I think that the Israel backed, and APAC backed this woman, and they used three different shell packs, and they all have goofy names like Progress Now and shit. But no, it's just APAC trying to influence that election without letting people know that they're influencing the election. Because if it comes out they're influencing the election, the person they're backing is done. That's it. And whoever, the APAC, not only are they sponsoring one of the women, but they're also lobbying for the Muslim woman to, because they're hoping, because she lost, like she had the worst. They're trying to make it so the Muslim woman takes votes from the anti-Zionist candidate. So not only are they paying for one candidate, they're paying for two. They're paying for one to win and the other one to steal votes from their opponent. Bro, that is so fucking crooked. Where you have a primary or an election, and you have you have two forces that are being used to influence these politicians. One is the voting, and the other one is dirty money from billionaires. And these billionaires, they have more of a say in who rules us than we do. What the fuck? How can this be? Like, how is this acceptable? How is this acceptable? Like, it blows my mind. Like, nobody has a problem with this. Like when they were explaining the kind of chicanery that was taking place at this election, it's like, dude, they are they're operating on multiple levels of underhandedness. They're hiding behind facades, fronts. They're paying for multiple candidates. How can this be even remotely acceptable? It just blows my mind. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And you don't hear this stuff on any mainstream media. You hear it on like Breaking Points and shit, and the Young Turks. I mean, this is a serious issue. What is going on? Actually, oh yes, I still have that video up. I'm fixing to put it on now. Show you guys what I'm talking about. Some bullshit, man. It's a like I know of lobbying, and I think lobbying is somewhat of a necessary thing, but the way that it's going, the way that it's going down now today, this is just unacceptable. I don't see that it could be put any other way. Here we do 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 do. Here we go. Here. Oh, I see. That's what I was wondering, why can I not change the size of the window that I'm in, the little mini window? Okay.
The House, then
I really have never been a leftist, never been a progressive, but I'm more of an independent. Just in the last month, I have gone from being I mean, I'm still right wing, and that's my main thing, but I'm not paying for wars. Like, no, I'm not going along with that shit with the Republicans anymore. If both sides are going to spend money, well, I'd rather that they spend the money on fucking social shit then. Because they're spending money on wars, it's worse. They spend money on these wars, people die, and we don't get anything out of that, just like with welfare. But at least we're not killing people.
But that was their rationale. That was the same rationale they used to spend millions to defeat Andy Levin in Michigan. Levin was a synagogue president and part of the Levin family dynasty, member of Congress. He was districted into a race with
Here we go.
by AIPAC to try to win this race. So for votes would and also, and I kept telling y'all this. Now you can believe me. Bushra finished 6th. So like people were like, no, she has a shot. She has a shot. No. So AIPAC put money. Super PACs. They created a new one called Progressive Fund or something like that.
This is insane, dude.
At least $22 million in 4 Illinois congressional races that were very closely watched because there was only
$22 million
in which they spent openly and acknowledged that they were spending the race.
Fuck?
The other 3, they funneled through kind of made up super PACs. One called Affordable Chicago Now, another one called Elect Chicago Women. When those got outed as AIPAC super PACs, they created a new one called Progressive Fund or something like that they started funneling money through. So let's go through these 4 races.
You got it, brother.
Let's start with the one that everybody cares about the most, even though arguably it wasn't the most important one when it comes to the kind of gradients of ideological difference between the candidates. That's District 9, which was Laura Fine, who was the AIPAC candidate.
Bro.
We knew it. It was clear, even though they were using kind of fake super PACs. Kat Abu Ghazala.
This is some underhanded shit, man. They're using fake super PACs. These are the equivalent of shell corporations. You know, this is like embezzling and shit, dude. Like, how is this the system we're using?
And Daniel Biss, who's like Evanston mayor. And then you had Bushra Amiwala, who was a local elected official who was running kind of to Kat and Daniel's left. And people kept pushing to kind of drop out and endorse Kat. That was probably never going to happen. So Daniel Biss won by about 4,500 votes.
4 points.
Yeah. One thing I think the left should take away from all of these races is that there should be a deep stigma on candidates who cannot win and refuse to drop out. And I'm not just talking about Bushra. I'm talking about across the board. There was a failure to consolidate. And when you combine a failure to consolidate behind a single candidate with millions of dollars in spending for the other candidate, it's very difficult to win, and you let then AIPAC candidates, win with like 30% of the vote.
Fine only got 20%, which is pretty interesting.
So Fine just 20% with millions spent on her behalf.
I just have to pause for a moment, just think about how completely ridiculous it is that the people of Illinois' 9th district, suburban Chicago, had their race hijacked into a mandate on Middle Eastern foreign policy.
Right, except none of the actual ads talked about foreign policy.
Right,
even though they were.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and also, I kept telling y'all this. Now you can believe me. Bushra finished 6th, so like people were like, no, she has a shot. She has a shot. No, so AIPAC put money behind Bushra Amiwala's campaign, trying to peel votes away from Kat and from Biss to try to boost Laura Fine.
What the fuck?
She finished behind multiple candidates that you've never even heard of. She got a total of 6,000 votes, 5%.
Unacceptable.
Every single one of her votes would have had to go to Kat in order for Kat to win. And there's just no world in which 100% of votes go from one candidate to another.
Yeah, a lot of them were protest votes anyway.
Yeah, and a lot of her supporters did not like Kat. Her support was concentrated among South Asian population.
It's a pretty good news
which also
show.
had problems with Kat for other kind of optical reasons. So Biss, who had the support of J Street and had millions spent against him by AIPAC, or hundreds of thousands at least. I don't know if it climbed to millions against, but millions in total spent by AIPAC to try to win this race. So Biss ends up winning. Biss had kind of an Elizabeth Warren Democrat. He had Elizabeth Warren's endorsement like on day one of the campaign. And this is kind of an Elizabeth Warren district. It's kind of a suburban district. So ended up, so he ends up winning. He'll win the general. It's not even close. In his victory speech last night, he mentions J Street and AIPAC. Let's roll that.
Let me end this simply by saying, AIPAC found out the hard way. The 9th district is not for sale. So So enough about APAC. May tonight be the last time I utter their name. This victory belongs to J Street. And they can defend J Street to the cause, tooth and nail, against unspeakable odds for that point of view that represents the mainstream in this district and the mainstream of the Jewish community.
Yeah!
So the question now, Emily, for the left will be, I think, around organizing BIS and putting pressure on BIS. There is an argument that, and this unfolded in the Malinowski district in New Jersey 11, where Ana Lilia Mejia ended up winning thanks to AIPAC, smashing Malinowski.
Right.
So Malinowski was a former, had been an elected Democrat before. He had worked at the State Department. He had a lot of credibility among Democrats in the House when it came to foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what AIPAC said publicly was that even though Malinowski was much milder in his criticism of Israel, his mild criticism was more of a threat to them than Mejia's strong criticism, because they think they can marginalize Mejia and say, well, you don't need to listen to her, she's crazy squad radical. But Malinowski is harder for them to marginalize. And so that was their, either cope or their rationale for why they were actually okay that their preferred candidate lost and they accidentally boosted this squad-like candidate. Now, I think they miscalculated. I think Ana Lilia is going to have a lot more power in the House than they expected, but that was their rationale. That was the same rationale they used to spend millions to defeat Andy Levin in Michigan. Levin was a synagogue president and part of the Levin family dynasty, member of Congress. He was redistricted into a race with Haley Stevens, and AIPAC spent millions to back Stevens over Levin, because they publicly made this argument that it was dangerous to have a guy who called himself a liberal Zionist,
You can't let these people
who was a
just
synagogue
continue.
president, who was criticizing Israel, who was casting votes against Israel, and was supporting Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar when they were being called anti-Semitic. He would show up with them and say, "They are not. They are my friends. They have legitimate criticisms of Israel, and you cannot weaponize anti-Semitism against them just because you disagree with them politically." And the fact that he was a synagogue
That's
president
what they do.
made that punch from him land much harder. And so they said, we need to get him out of office.
Yeah.
And they got him out of office. And a similar thing is unfolding with BIS. BIS's mom was Israeli. He's got lots of connections to Israel. He has the support of J Street, which calls itself liberal Zionist. And so to have BIS out there attacking AIPAC and criticizing Israel and supporting Block the Bombs, which doesn't go far enough, but it is considered to be existential to Israel and AIPAC, the Block the Bombs Act. They feel like BIS is a significant threat to them.
You can see how that would make sense.
Yeah, and so for them to, they're now doing this cope, like, we beat Kat and we beat Bushra. Bushra finished 6th, get out of here. I'm gonna give you spent money to support her.
You're gonna got 21% of the vote.
Yeah, and collectively, BIS and Gazella got well over a majority, and their candidate got 20%.
Yeah.
So they got washed. So now, what people have to do is organize
in suburban
around
Chicago.
BIS. Yeah. I saw somebody saying yesterday that the kind of anti-Zionist movement needs to have more space for these quote-unquote liberal Zionist critics of Israel, because their argument was, in the journey from full-on AIPAC level support of Israel to becoming anti-Zionist, it's actually a bigger leap to go from AIPAC hardcore right-wing Zionism to liberal Zionism. Like, that is a harder move to make and more dramatic than it is to go from liberal Zionism to anti-Zionism. Because once you're in the liberal Zionist space and you're starting to talk about apartheid and occupation and genocide, the rationale and the logic just pushes you to anti-Zionism eventually. Like, it's just a question of how long it takes you to move from there to there. So the argument would be, the goal now of Kat supporters and Bushra supporters needs to be to pressure BIS to go further. And I think there's also opportunities to do that in the 2 other districts where AIPAC won. But let's do District 7 next, where AIPAC caught just a brutal L. The only race where they spent money with their chests and admitted that they were the ones doing the spending, it was like $4 to $5 million.
Bro, you hear that? They admitted they were the ones doing the spending? That's insane, man. That's insane that such an occurrence takes place in this country. That a group of crooked-ass billionaires are doing cloak and dagger behind the fucking curtain. Dude, it's so disgusting, man. Why can't they leave us alone? Why can't they be satisfied with fucking milking us and sucking the blood out of us? Why do they have to rule us? Bro. Why are we owned by these fucking people, man? Like, what the fuck? What deal did they make with the devil in history that basically made them like this permanent group of, I mean, I almost feel like it might be, maybe it's supernatural or something, where all they concern themselves with is ruling us. Most people, most regular people, like in America, they're more concerned with living their lives, having children, owning a home. These people, no, that's not acceptable. They can't just live their life and own a home. No, no, no. They must control levers of power. They must, dude, why? Why is this the case? Why? Why do these people like, and they wonder why they got chased out of Europe? Like, do they really wonder? Like, dude, maybe those people were tired of fucking having you on their back like a monkey, bro, like a fucking heroin addiction. Like, maybe that's what it was. It's shit's gonna happen again too. I mean, they know it's gonna happen again. They knew it was gonna happen again as soon as it happened the first time, I would imagine. That's why they went so far out of their way to salt the earth and make uh, conservative and right wing politics radioactive. That way, nobody would ever get near it again. Well, it worked for 80 or 90 years, but it didn't work forever. They're going to be facing the same issues here
Melissa
shortly.
Conyers-Irvin, who is the comptroller of Chicago, currently under investigation for corruption, just comically corrupt. This was a massively divided field, and according to all of the kind of prognosticators, them putting this many millions in the race behind her was going to be enough to just push her over the top. That you just couldn't compete with that avalanche of money. She lost. She finished with 20.5%, almost exactly what Laura Fine got.
Yeah.
AIPAC's many millions of dollars got her 19,000 votes,
yeah.
which is 3,000 less than LaShawn Ford.
I wonder how much money that was per vote.
And that's only the money we know about. That doesn't count mailers and C4 and all the off the books kind of spending. Incredible. You could have gone around and paid $1,000 to every person, old school Chicago
So
stuff.
literally, you could have done that. You could have paid $2,000.
We'll give you
gave people $2,000 a vote. A vote. That's how much money they spent on that election. They could have just paid individual voters $2,000 straight up. And this is the kind of money that they're spending on politicians, bro. The $2,000 for each person, that's a lot of money per person. Imagine what it is in aggregate for one motherfucker. For the politician.
Please just show up.
Oh my gosh.
Instead, they gave it to consultants who were going to buy vote and lost. Now, the races they won, we saw that they were bragging about Donna Miller. So in District 2, Jan Schakowsky endorsed Donna Miller, and then AIPAC started doing this, these fake super PACs to support her. And when it was exposed that it was AIPAC
they're
money,
such
Schakowsky
sneaky,
withdrew her
filthy people.
Her endorsement.
I just don't get it. Why are they so obsessed with ruling over us, with having our politicians on a short leash? What are they getting out of it? Is this how they keep their death grip on our country? Is this how they maintain their control? Bro, this shit's got to stop, man. It's got to stop. We don't own we don't have, this isn't our country because of this.
As we talked about in the last segment, they sort of deny and call it a conspiracy theory that they're the ones behind these super PACs. But then when their candidate wins, they take credit for the victory, which is, there's just, do you get to do that? I don't think
I guess so.
I don't think you get to do that. So Donna Miller did win with 40% of the vote. And this is where we need to stigmatize the lack of consolidation. So 60% of people voted against her.
People that aren't going to win have to drop out.
So Jesse Jackson Jr. and Robert Peters split their vote. Jesse Jackson Jr. trying to make a comeback. Peters was kind of the progressive real hope in that race, but Jesse Jackson Jr. has such a name and a reputation there that he was always going to do quite well. He got almost 30%. Was it Yvette Brown with 10%, pulling another? So those three candidates, one of them needed to. The left needs some mechanism to say, no, this is who we're getting behind. Because if
This was a typical Tea Party.
Are you in
Yeah.
here still,
Conundrum.
Alex?
tough.
Some Tea Party
It's
hitting the
tough.
same snag. Yep.
It's tough. The left is not organized enough or ruthless enough to be able to pull this off. And so the same problem hit them in District 8. Melissa Bean, another former member of Congress. Before that, she was a top J.P. Morgan banker. I covered her
Cases.
when she was in Congress last time around. They put her on the Financial Services Committee, where she played a very unhelpful role when it came to banking reform. Now she's coming back. AIPAC spent heavily, and she finished with about almost 32% of the vote. Very narrowly beat Junaid Ahmed, who had 27% of the vote. So very close race. Ahmed had the support of Justice Democrats. He was the kind of left-wing candidate. Now there's a group called American Priorities. This is the kind of anti-genocide PAC, that pro-Palestine PAC that spent heavily for Nida Alam in North Carolina. They've raised like $10+ million, and they've pledged that they're going to take on AIPAC. There was a lot of pressure among progressive electoral folks for them to get into this race and get behind Ahmed. And the argument was, like, he can do this. Like, he's a serious candidate. What I was told is that they have a poll from like January that showed that they didn't think he could win.
It's hard to
And so they
imagine how
didn't.
the Save America
And
Act
so they
could be passed through
refused to get in the race. They
reconciliation.
resisted
And
this
by
pressure.
hard, I mean essentially impossible.
AIPAC spent heavily.
And why is that?
And
It's
what I think
because
what these
the
results show is that
reconciliation procedure under the
they
Byrd
could have made
rule
up 2,500
is a
votes.
thing
30,
where
was it 3,500
financial
votes?
bills, basically, this
Maybe
is
not.
a thing so
No,
that
maybe $1 million from them
budgets
doesn't
won't get
push Ahmed over the top.
and the government
But I
can
think it
continue
does.
to be funded.
Like, if the race is that
it's
close,
just a monetary thing,
then you've got
then
a
you could
couple,
potentially
multiple other candidates
pass it.
had 6%
This has
or
nothing
more.
to do with monetary. This is not
Morrison
a budgetary
at 9,
thing. This is not
Dankel at 9, Tully at
Taxes.
12.7. Like, no consolidation, plus the refusal to get behind. The folks behind this new PAC are similar to a lot of people who get into politics who are like, people before us haven't figured out how to do it, but we figured it out. It's mathematical, it's quantitative. We're going to follow the data.
This guy
We're
Ryan
gonna
Grimm is
moneyball it.
really
We're moneyball
smart.
it.
Yeah.
He's not a dummy.
And it's not quite that
He's a
simple.
smart motherfucker.
Yep.
And
You know, it's
also
kind of
emotion ends
funny
up playing a
too.
role in it. I wonder if
I was thinking about
they were outspent by AI and AIPAC in
the
the
kind of
Nida Alam race and lost this like brutal, very close
YouTube
race, 1,000
window.
votes or something.
Yeah.
And so I bet that emotion ended up.
But I was thinking, I mean, he's around my age, and I was thinking, when I was thinking, like, you know, he's a white guy like me, but you know, I know how he was when he was a kid. I grew up with guys exactly like this Ryan Grimm dude, like one or two kids, where he's a loner. He's very obviously a loner. Very obviously isn't really a people person. You can tell he's very smart and somewhat aloof. But he is really smart, and the guy writes really good articles. he's a liberal, but he actually doesn't behave and talk like one. He just kind of talks with a sort of a common sense, you know, like that's his shtick, is common sense. But it's just, I thought it was kind of funny because the way he is, he's kind of a loner. You can tell he spent all of his time with his nose buried into work at school or in a book or something. But I mean, he's a pretty cool. He was just in Cuba, like in February.
Playing a role that they were burned and like on their heels then coming into Illinois and so they lacked the confidence to get in for Junaid. So that's a missed opportunity for them. Just to be a little ruthless. Love them, but you know, that's a miss.
Yeah, that is a miss.
But now there are two opportunities here: Donna Miller and Melissa Bean. I think Miller represents a stronger opportunity.
Why is that?
So she won with AIPAC support, but it was the secret AIPAC support. But she knows she only got 40% of the vote. Does she want to face a primary challenger in 2 years that has consolidated support from the left?
Right.
Or does she want to publicly announce tomorrow that she will not take AIPAC money, that she rejects that she's angry about their support, she wishes they hadn't,
Stay away from me.
do not ever elect me to Congress again. How dare you?
Do not come.
But that's what Valerie Fouché did.
And Emily
She's
Jashinsky.
headed back to Congress. And it may have been
I
just
like
enough
her, but
to keep enough support.
she's kind of
So what I would say to
busted.
activists in her district, Miller represents an opportunity to basically
not
snatch
particularly,
victory from defeat.
Yeah.
That if AIPAC secretly goes
Well,
around and spends
pretty.
millions of dollars
She's all right.
to elect a candidate, and then you come in and lobby them
I guess
and turn them into
I
your
mean,
ally,
marrying her. I mean,
that
I
strips
could
away
see
that
doing
tactic
that
from
because
because
you can tell she's
once-
just not some whore.
I look at Max Frost, like down in Orlando.
Huh,
AIPAC
that's
and DFI
crazy. Max Frost is literally my fucking my congressman. Maxwell Frost, that big fucking baby. He's a big fucking baby Huey. sucking on his thumb. But you know something? Actually, for the first time, like a few months ago, I seen him. He did like an ad or something where he was like anti-Israel APAC, or he was against something, and I was like, I'm right there with you, brother. Like I actually agreed with this cat on something. Normally, I kind of hate his guts, but not for that. And honestly, I kind of see a lot more eye to eye with
They made a deal
like
where
I
they would
understand why
allow,
Democrats are Democrats.
they would allow, they wouldn't spend against Max Frost if he would back off some of his, criticism of Israel. Once he was in office, he has been a
Bro, my congressman, thank God, my congressman goes hard as fuck in the paint against Israel, bros. How fucking awesome is that, my dudes? Like, I don't even have to fight. He's already there busting skulls and shit. Yes. I love that. That is fucking awesome. Like, I already know that my district congressman is up there fucking these Jays up in the halls of power.
strident critic of Israel. And APAC is now kind of screwed because he's popular in the district.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. They could replicate that.
So maybe,
Hell
maybe
yeah.
Donna Miller,
Appreciate
if
that,
she's
Bob.
watching, like,
Bro, but
look at Max Frost.
I live in Orlando, as you guys know, and that guy, for a while, I did not like that. That bothered me, actually. Like, yeah, I even said this fucking baby Huey little bitch, but no, now that I think about it, yeah, he goes really hard on APAC, and beautiful, beautiful, which is kind of crazy because, bro, just like a couple hundred miles south, it's like APAC country, bro. Those people down there literally have Brooklyn accents because it's so thick with those. Dude, they're thicker than flies down there.
Tell APAC, I'm not taking your super PAC support ever again.
Yes.
Thank you for helping me get here now.
Fucking bastard.
I'm done.
Right.
And she then, but then she has to do what Fouché did, which is demonstrate it, sign all the letters that the activists ask you to sign, vote the way that they want you to vote on these issues.
Yeah.
And then you'll win enough of them that it drains support for a primary challenge in 2 years. Because
oh yeah, as long as you do the people's bidding and just go hard to the people, like do what your constituents want, nobody's going to primary you. And it's only the people in your district. They can't bus people in. It's the people that live in your district. And if you do what those people wish you to do, yeah, you're rock solid. I mean, there's nobody that these rich sons of bitches, these overlords, there's nobody that they can bribe to vote you out.
office, really. It's what they do in office that matters to people. So if an initially APAC-backed candidate turns on them, maybe take that win.
Interesting.
So hey, just something to think about.
Very interesting.
And then we've got I don't know if you can do that with Melissa Bean, the JP Morgan banker.
That's probably
Just-
good.
Man, that is great that I
But hey,
I'm
that one you probably want to
so pleased about
start
that.
organizing for Junaid Ahmed like today to challenge her in 2 years. and this time consolidate around a single candidate.
Any of you guys
So,
see any
I think, and
like the
next
Joe
time,
Rogan,
the super PAC,
Dave Smith
American Priorities might not make
show?
the same mistake. They will see that
Anything
perhaps Bean is more vulnerable.
So much going on.
worth
yesterday.
watching?
In Illinois, particularly.
Yep. And then we've got this wild Illinois Senate race. You can put up F3 here. So this hit Raja Krishnamurthy, congressman who raised insane amounts of money from crypto, like
Millions.
tens of
Yeah,
millions.
like 20 million. I
like
think it was like crazy number.
ungodly amounts of money.
Yeah.
Against Juliana Stratton, who is J.B. Pritzker's lieutenant governor. And she had the support of kind of progressives in the state. She heavily won black voters in the state. She did not really have much vocal support from the Congressional
Archbishop
Black Caucus,
of Canterbury is a
which
woman now.
which they should be criticized for, and maybe related to the amount of crypto and corporate money that was being spent against her. But Pritzker went in heavy for her and made this kind of a referendum on his own
Pritzker is
popularity.
such a disgusting pig.
And she ended up beating him by 7 points, so fairly convincing. victory there.
Yeah, when you have that level of money flooding into the race and you
Okay.
have a 7-point win, that's
There's other stuff
And there was,
on.
and
I
they
just
spent
wanted to
like
know
the
if y'all had seen
corporate
anything.
and crypto money went in heavily to support Robin Kelly, who finished third as another black woman running,
I
and
already
their
know.
cynical idea was we're going to split the black
This
vote.
is what
right.
I was thinking about this
And it
earlier. I
didn't.
already know what I'm
It didn't
gonna
work.
do. I already had it figured out.
You may have seen Juliana Stratton. She was the one who did the
She had a lot of money too.
F Trump.
Yeah.
Remember that ad?
Trump.
Yes.
F Trump.
So clearly, F Trump works in Illinois.
Well, Abu Ghazaleh was doing that, but I guess
She's under indictment,
Biss, I don't know. But so the amount of crypto money here, this is the
Yo,
political
check
group.
this shit out.
Fairshake.
I
They
was
spent
up
about
at
90
Costco like a couple hours ago, and I sat down to eat my fucking dog, my hot dog, and my have my Coke. And this guy is sitting on the other side of the table from me, and his two kids are on my side. And I was in the center, you know, it's those picnic tables. I'm in the center. He's on one end. There was somebody on the other end, so I had to sit kind of close. And his kids were talking about how tall he was, or something about us being, or, you know, them being tall, or us being tall, like as Americans, I guess. And he goes, "Aren't we glad that the Germans and the Dutch, or aren't we?" He said something like, "Aren't we grateful that the Germans and the Dutch made us so tall?" And the kids are like, "No, they didn't." He's like, "Then who did?" And they're like, "God made us tall." He's like, "No, no, it was the Germans and the Dutch." And I'm like, based. And got up and walked away, bro. I was like wiping my face like based and just slid off, bro. I couldn't fucking believe it. And the guy, he just looked up at me and smiled. I'm like, oh my God, bro. That was so fucking based. Actually, the guy looked familiar, actually, but you know, he was just your you know, you're a good your average stand up, you know, white guy, you know, kind of like super light to light brown hair to like blonde. He had a beard, some glasses on with like a little girl and a little boy. It was just wild, bro, that this guy was just like, "No, the Germans and the Dutch made us so tall." And I'm like, "No fucking way." And they said, like I said, they're like, "Nuh-uh, God made us so tall." And he's like, "No, it was the Germans and the Dutch." And I just like, based. That shit was sick, man. I just couldn't believe it. You know, he looked like he was gonna be a beta cuck boomer. He wasn't a boomer. They were really small kids, but you know, he kind of had like he was dressed, you know, with like a a, a, a paterfamilias special. You know what I mean? Paternal special. He had the fucking tucked in collared shirt and like jean shorts, I think. But and when I heard him say that, I was thinking, holy fuck, bro, hella like based. What the fuck? I couldn't believe it. I'm thinking, but you know what that says to me? That's a good sign, brother. That means that this shit isn't just some fringed fuck shit, or isn't just some fringe incel shit. It's not, bro. It's not. Like when I was younger, or when I was growing up, you know, my dad, you know, he always had a lot of pride and a lot of I won't even say pride, but he just those are our people. I mean, it wasn't hard to tell that, you know, that's the way he felt about it. You know, those are our people. Uh, you know, and he wouldn't talk shit about other people, but he was just positive about them, and he wasn't like that about anybody else. That's how he got that across to us, me and my brothers. And you know, I could tell, you know, he's a boomer, and although he's much more liberal than he was when I was a kid, like when I was in elementary school, you know, he would go out of his way more or less to kind of, uh, you know, I just got the idea that, you know, that he wasn't, he didn't like being around other people, you know, other groups, which, you know, he grew up in fucking Florida, you know, in the sticks in Florida. back in the 70s, you know, when you could ride around with a shotgun in your fucking truck, go to school. I went to the same high school as my dad, my mom. Like where I grew up was a pig farm when they were younger. That and orange groves, you know. But like, and my parents knew everybody, you know. Their both of their houses are still there too. My mom's parents lived there till just like 20 years ago. Like when I was a kid, they still lived in the same house. But like, you know, that's when my parents grew up in that milieu, you know, and they went to school with coloreds, of course, you know, and my dad was not a rude person. You know, he's a very modest and civilized man. But he didn't think very highly of this, you know, the ones that are on the side of the road begging you know, they weren't really in our area of town, but when we would be around him, you know, he would just be like, ugh, you know, just, or it would be like, I'd be talking about a kid at school, like got in trouble for stealing or something. And he'd just be like, you know, kind of just give me a look. And actually though, his dad, like my dad's side is from Michigan. Like my grandparents, they grew up in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was integrated when my grandfather went to high school in like the 40s, or no, the 50s. Yeah, my grandfather and my grandmother, they went to an integrated high school in Grand Rapids, Michigan in like the 50s. So like, you know, my family, they weren't Southerners that were prejudiced or anything like that, you know. No, they spent time, you know, like my dad spent a lot of time with him down here in the South, you know, because it was integrated. And his dad lived around him when he was younger, you know, and like, you know, you rub elbows with these people and you have stories. You know, I remember my grandfather telling me he was a manager. He worked in management for UPS, which that's why he came down to Florida. They were expanding from the north. They didn't have any stuff down in Florida, and they offered him a job. He went from being a truck driver, you know, a semi driver, you know, to and then he came down here as management, brought his whole fam whole fam family. And you know, otherwise my parents would have never met. But I remember him telling me a story where this fucking dude was stealing out of the truck. So my grandfather was in loss management. So it was his job to hunt, to figure out what's going on. And he said, you know, he investigated and come to find out it was this black helper. You know, he was a package handler. And my grandfather called the police, you know, and he gets frog marched out of the out of the warehouse. And my grandfather's like, this, he goes, will you believe this shit? This motherfucker had the fucking, either the nuts, you know, the stones, or just the ignorance and stupidity like on the way out, he's like, you know, am I fired or do I still have my job? You know, my grandfather's like, what the fuck do you mean? Do you still have your job, motherfucker? You're going to jail, bro. Like, are you stupid? You know, but like just shit like that. It's like, and not that they're worse necessarily. They're just different, you know? And I get that, you know. And my grandfather, when he was around him, you know, that was when segregation was in full effect in the South. And, you know, people tended to stay away from each other. You know, they didn't want to get in trouble, you know, so they really didn't fuck with people. So my grandfather, it's not like he dealt with violent ones or assholes. You know, they just wasn't his thing. And like that, my dad was a Marine, and he left the reserves, the Marine reserves, because he said, you know, he could not take orders from colored garbage men. He just couldn't do it. He's like, I can't, you know, this fucking dude has shit breath. He's yelling in my face over some fuck shit. He's like, it just wasn't worth it. When I talked about joining when I was younger, when it was the Iraq War, he talked me out of it pretty much. He's like, man, he's like, that shit ain't for you. He's like, I barely made it out. Or no, he actually he had he got several decorations because he's like an expert shot. Several decorations, and he could do more pull-ups than anybody on Paris Island. Was Could do the most pull-ups at once. But yeah, he said that, it like I'm headstrong like him. I gotta, I kind of always have something to say. And he was like, that ain't gonna be, it's not gonna be fun. He's like, you're just gonna end up getting in trouble. That's what he said. He's like, you're gonna get in trouble like everything else. And if you get in trouble in the Marines, it ain't no slap on the fucking wrist. It ain't no where you get yelled at and then you just go back. No, he's like, you go to fucking jail and you'll sit your ass in that jail until you get out. Until you get released by the the military. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, maybe you're right. So I've decided against it. But you go through life, and my dad, he was into smoking pot and I dare say other drugs when he in the 80s when he was younger, and he had his run-ins with, you know, I guess a few different times and had to tune a few people up. But you live your
9
life,
million. Nice.
and by the time you're an adult, you realize, yeah, I prefer being around my own people.
9 million on ads for Krishnamurthy's opponents. So they were trying to, trying to have some fun with that.
It's nice to see
trying to boost him by just smearing.
Yeah, nice to see the crypto guys lose. That's something.
Yeah,
we can take that, right?
Yeah, so they were spending for Kelly against
Right.
Stratton
Right.
in the race.
Yeah, they're cynically trying to lift Kelly.
Yeah.
To pull votes away from Stratton.
It's just a crazy amount of money on this. I mean,
And to make an obvious point, whatever this was on display yesterday in Illinois, it's not democracy. Like all of these, pro-Israel and corporate and crypto and AI, just dumping money in, but not running on their issues. It'd be one thing if it's like crypto rules, like we should all and you ran your campaign on that, but they're not. Like you said, they're doing this cynical stuff of like, oh, we actually support Robin Kelly. She's wonderful. No, you don't.
Right.
You're just trying to trick people.
Right.
Who otherwise would vote for Stratton to vote for Kelly so that Raja wins.
Right.
That's like that. It's just so gross.
Shit,
Yeah.
whatever
Bring
is
back
on.
the Tammany Hall, Chicago machine stuff. Like that was much cleaner than this system.
You have more agency in the Tammany Hall system.
Yeah.
But actually, no, I think there's glass half empty. You just laid that out very well. Glass half full. Voters said no to the crypto.
That's true. Voters,
AIPAC and
voters saw through it in several.
Okay. Look at this.
Prescriptions during this hour.
Benjamin
Who
Netanyahu.
served 5 years.
Nor was there systematic.
Bro, in the 70s, this motherfucker was still doing this shit, bro. The 70s, almost a full 60 years in the past. Can you fucking believe this? Bro, how did we get cursed?
Deliberate attacks on them. I think that you can tell a lot about terrorists, but what happens when they come to power? Those who fight for freedom and come to power do not impose terrorism. Those who do, who fight in terroristic means, end up being masters of terrorist states in Libya, in Algeria, and other countries that support and practice terrorism.
Well, I think this is important to nail down, don't you, Mr. Ambassador, because I have myself to have been engaged in an effort in the United Nations to get the General Assembly to agree on a denunciation of terrorism in 1973 when I was in the UN. And just before the vote came, there was a motion made by the Saudi ambassador, Mr. Baroudi.
Yes, I remember it.
You remember him? Everybody remembers him. And he rewrote the measure as follows, quotes, measures to prevent terrorism and other forms of violence which endanger or take innocent human lives or jeopardize fundamental freedoms, and a study of the underlying causes of those forms of terrorism and acts of violence which lie in misery, frustration, grievance, and despair, and which cause some people to sacrifice human lives, including their own, in an attempt to effect radical changes.
What atrocious rhetoric.
Yeah. Now, mind you, this was, by the way, quintessential Baroudi. This was the title of his proposed resolution.
The title?
Now, if every woman, child, and grown man had voted in favor of that, it would have solved nothing, right?
Yes.
So that your symposium really attempted to narrow the form of terrorism to a point that nobody would disagree with, correct?
Exactly.
Old Netanyahu laying the groundwork.
Ambassador?
Well, on the definition, I will agree with my friend Benjamin. But I took some notes with me, and I was looking on we have made some progress since you were with the U.S. delegation.
Were you there then?
No, but
73?
no, because I resigned from the UN the day after Dag Hammarskjöld's death. Hammarskjöld was a remarkable man in
12
many
years
ways.
earlier.
And he died, as you know, on the 17th of September, 61, and resigned the day after. But still, I was always interested in the UN affairs. But for the information, not only for your information, because you know about it, but at least for the people who are kind enough to listen to us, I want to recall that last December, '85, there was a resolution adopted by consensus condemning, extremely strongly, all, I will try to translate, I have it in French here, all criminal acts, methods, practices of terrorists, wherever and whoever is acting. And may I call your attention that in the Security Council, on the 9th of October '85, we had a strong declaration by the President of the Security Council condemning the Achille Moro's dramatic and sad story. On the 18th of '85, a resolution on hostages, which was adopted unanimously. Lebanon, we did stay.
That Ambassador Cavallari has just talked about. Is that what you mean by no concessions?
In the case of
No
South Africa,
exceptions?
you don't.
World War II, in that
You know, this is like
the
the
airmen may not
80s,
have
I
wanted to
think.
kill civilians,
80s
but
or
it
early
knew
90s.
that this was going to happen when they blew that up. Now, there's a doctrine in the law that a person is held to intend the probable consequences of his acts. If I whip out a hammer and start banging Mr. Buckley on the head, my intention...
Don't do.
I wouldn't do it. Well, I might be tempted. My intention might be simply to pound some sense into him. But if I kill him, I'm held as a rational human being to know that that was the logical consequence of my act. Why shouldn't that apply to terrorism?
Well, for a simple reason. By the way, the King David Hotel was not a hotel at the time, but the headquarters of the British Army. It was a military headquarters. It was not a hotel. The important thing is, in this case, is you're quite right, which is precisely why.
Did the military headquarters just put up stray
No, it
Jewish
was not a hotel.
visitors?
No, it had workers. It had local workers, including Jews.
Who slept there?
Yes. No, I don't think they slept there, but they were there.
He was talking about the 30 or 40 people who were asleep there during the bombing.
Weren't there people who were...
This guy is obsessed
There
with
may have been some people who were
Jews.
napping. I don't know. I don't follow. The interesting question is, your question is precisely the right one. That is precisely why the forces that attacked this called up the military compound and said, there's going to be a bomb that's going to go off here. Vacate it. The phone was received, the message was received and simply not treated seriously. I spent 5 years in the Israeli army. I was an officer. I fought terrorists many times, but only after they had killed civilians. They never once attacked me.
I see. So they were regular people that he was killing. Because every time when he says terrorists today, who he's talking about is fucking civilians. That's what they call a terrorist. You know, that's the only way that they can kill them legally. So that, you know, otherwise they would be civilians. They couldn't kill them. So they just call them terrorists so that they can blow up buildings and wipe these people out and get them off this land. I mean, fuck, man. It's a dark proposition they're working towards.
My soldiers or adjoining units. I would love to have the terrorists target an Israeli, the PLO, target an Israeli military compound somewhere for a change, and to call in advance and say, oh, by the way, there may be some civilian casualties. Please clear out. And this is basically the difference.
See, I think what you're trying to do with this definition, I think it's very admirable, is essentially
he's
two
got
things.
these
Number one,
motherfuckers. He's got them fooled. They believe this fucking snake. Yeah, see, we don't believe this son of a bitch, not anymore.
want a definition of terrorism that is limited to means and not ends, so that you can say this kind of behavior, whatever it is beyond the pale, no matter what it is you're trying to achieve. And number two, you want a definition that doesn't embrace various past examples of things that have been done in causes that seem quite admirable, such as the French resistance or the founding of Israel. The problem is, I think when you get down to specifics, you are both excluding from your definition certain things you might wish to include, such as the bombing of the
well, let's take
seen
the Jewish terrorist underground that was found now in Israel. It's a perfect case.
You guys,
it's not a question of whose axe is gored, whose ox is gored. Let me give you simply this example to illustrate that we're quite rigorous. I am in Israel is quite rigorous on this aspect.
You know, I was thinking earlier too about JFK, and those speeches were so deep. Like, they had different levels of meaning. I mean, they had a lot of different ideas and different, like, the speech was good. You know, like the speaking, the writing, it was similar to like the Bible, you know, how deep it is with meaning. Yeah, they are. You're right. They are all in the same fraternity. They're all a part of the ruling class. That's all that is.
With your own syntactic. Noam Chomsky is listed in anybody's catalog as among the half-dozen top heroes of the New Left. This standing he achieved by adopting over the past 2 or 3 years a series of adamant positions projecting at least American foreign policy, at most America itself. His essays and speeches are collected in his new book, American Power and the New Mandarins. Usually, Mr. Chomsky writes non-political books, for instance, Syntactic Structures in 1957, Cartesian Linguistics in 1966, and Topics in the Theory of Generative Grammar, 1965.
I haven't.
He is a highly esteemed student of modern language and linguistics who teaches nowadays at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and has taught before at Berkeley, Columbia, and other strife-torn universities. He is a member of many organizations and learned societies, including, I'm sure he would want me to mention, the Aristotelian Society of Great Britain. In one of his essays, Mr. Chomsky writes, quote, by accepting the presumption of legitimacy of debate on certain issues, such as this one has already lost one's humanity. I should like to begin by asking him why, under the circumstances, if by being here he stands to lose his humanity, he consented to appear in the first place.
Because, first of all, I didn't quite put it in those terms, I don't think. I think that but I think that I said that there are certain issues, for example, Auschwitz, such that by consenting to discuss them, one degrades oneself and to some degree loses one's humanity, and I think that that's true. Nevertheless, I can easily imagine circumstances in which I would have been glad to debate Auschwitz. For example, if there were some chance that by debating Auschwitz it might have been possible to eliminate it or to at least mitigate the horror of what was going on. And I feel the same way about Vietnam. And I really think that fundamentally there is no argument anymore at an intellectual level, in my opinion. But I think it's very important to discuss it nevertheless.
At what level is there an argument?
Well, there is a policy which I think is a destructive and devastating policy. It's continuing, and the continuation of the policy is to some extent based on the fact of public apathy or public acceptance. Hence, there still is the necessity to convince people that they should act strongly to put an end to this policy.
At what point was there an intellectual argument? At which point did an intellectual argument in favor of our intervening in Vietnam cease to exist?
Can't seem to find it.
Well, as I say there, I think that there may have been a time when there was something to debate. For example, I think that in the middle 50s, though I was opposed to the policy, and I think that
you can post a link,
nevertheless, I think it was a debatable issue in a sense in which it is no longer a debatable issue.
Why is that?
Because at the moment I think it's really an issue of the survival of the existence of Vietnam as an entity, as a social and cultural entity. I think that's what's at stake.
But even that could be intellectually argued, couldn't it?
Well, in the same sense in which Auschwitz could be intellectually argued.
No, I mean in a different sense.
No, I think in the same sense. In fact, don't forget there were people who argued in favor of Auschwitz and gave...
No, I haven't gotten that at all. I haven't had any such on this program, nor do I intend to. But it seems to me that even if what you said were correct, there could be a perfectly legitimate argument over, for instance, the continuation of the state of Anguilla, or the continuation of the state of Biafra, or the continuation of the state of Goa.
I didn't talk about the existence of the state. I talked about the existence of the society as a social and cultural entity. I think that's what's at stake.
Oh, okay, well, if it's at stake, mightn't there be two points of view
secret societies?
about how to help it evolve into its natural forms, right?
Oh, there are many different points of view. I think they're very legitimate.
Well,
they're very legitimate. They're very legitimate issues that can be argued as to how the United States ought to most efficaciously put an end to its destructive actions in Vietnam. There are many different alternatives that might be thought about.
Yes, but one way, of course, to put an end to America's necessary intervention is to conclude the war successfully. That's a way.
Yeah,
right?
One possible way is by destroying Vietnam, which I think is probably the most likely outcome.
Yeah. Well, now, for instance, one way in which we put an end to the Nazi occupation of France was by destroying Nazi Germany, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. It seems to me that this was a position which is a tenable position, and mutatis mutandis, it's a tenable position.
No, because mutatis mutandis changes everything.
Why?
Because in this case,
as you know, it's not only but people with whom I disagree, like Arthur Schlesinger Jr., who refers to your theological certitudes and your liberal application of them to every subject in which you touch. So the subject of your own intolerance of other people's point of view is, I think, itself linguistically interesting.
Well, first of all, I don't accept that criticism. You see, if you look at that quotation, you'll notice that I put it in there, and recall the context. I said that when I argue the issue, I feel a tone of moral and emotional falseness, which I want to explain, but then I go ahead to argue the issue. So that's a side remark intended to explain my own feeling of emotional and moral falseness, which is real. I do feel it. But nevertheless, I then go ahead for 300 pages or so to discuss this and related issues.
Yeah,
so I don't really believe that it's fair to say that I'm not willing to tolerate other positions.
The trouble is, you don't end the book by saying, I'm kind of odd in feeling this. You say, everybody is odd who doesn't agree with me, right?
No, I don't think so. Do I say that?
This is certainly the burden of your book.
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. I mean, I think that I've given an argument.
Well, maybe this is a universal difficulty you're having, not being aware of certain people's reading of your position.
Well, then let me say, I think for example, I think I take a very qualified and temperate position on many, many issues in this book. For example, take the issue of the background of the Second World War, which I spent a lot of time on. If you notice, I end up with a statement saying that I don't see any way to give a clear, sharp resolution, clear, sharp answer to the question what we should have done under such and such circumstances. I discussed someone who did take a very strong and I think very honorable position, namely A.J. Musty, and I say that I wish I could answer the question for myself whether I feel that I would have taken or would have rejected that position, but I don't see any way to do it because the issue is mixed. On many issues, I feel that way. On the other hand, see, when the issue is when the issue is, let's say, 3 million tons of bombs dropped on Vietnam, I don't feel that way anymore. Nevertheless, I'm still perfectly willing to argue the issue calmly, quietly, and
as you would have saved the dropping of the bombs in Dresden.
Exactly, or the atom bomb. See, I would have been willing to argue the dropping the atom bomb, though I do feel that it's a war crime.
Sure, but I do think that you put some people at a disadvantage by your a priori assertion that any position that disagrees with your own is intellectually barren.
Well, I didn't mean that, really. Let me explain. Maybe it didn't come across, but what I meant was something else. I wanted to honestly state my own emotional and my own feeling about entering into a debate over this issue.
Portnoy-wise?
No, I think that the point is that I think it's only fair to an audience of readers to say this is the way I approach the issue, and you read me on the basis of this understanding the best I can give as to the way I'm approaching this issue. And it's perfectly true that when I do, if you notice what I say is that increasingly over the years in discussing this issue, I felt this feeling of emotional and moral falseness. And I think it would only be honest to express it.
Sure.
Then to go ahead with the discussion.
Oh, quite so. But you also say that you hate yourself for not having come to that position earlier.
Yeah, I do. I think that was a very great mistake.
Well, I hope to give you a little solace in the course of the... But the reason I do raise this, and I rejoice in your disposition,
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent,
to a newspaper
to
society.
cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers.
I love watching old shit like this.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate very much your generous invitation to be here tonight. You bear heavy responsibilities these days, and the article I read some time ago reminded me of how particularly heavily the burdens of present-day events bear upon your profession. You may remember that in 1851, the New York Herald Tribune, under the sponsorship and publishing of Horace Greeley, employed as its London correspondent an obscure journalist by the name of Karl Marx. We are told that foreign correspondent Marx, stone broke, and with a family ill and undernourished, constantly appealed to Greeley and managing editor Charles Dana for an increase in his munificent salary of $5 per installment, a salary which he and Engels ungratefully labeled as the lousiest petty bourgeois cheating. But when all his financial appeals were refused, Marx looked around for other means of livelihood and fame, eventually terminating his relationship with the Tribune and devoting his talents full-time to the cause that would bequeath to the world the seeds of Leninism, Stalinism, revolution, and the Cold War. If only this capitalistic New York newspaper had
You know he was a dog, right?
Had treated him more kindly.
Like, with women.
If only Marx had remained a foreign correspondent, history might have been different. And I hope all publishers will bear this lesson in mind the next time they receive a poverty-stricken appeal from a small increase in the expense account from an obscure newspaper man. Mr. Chairman, that when a well-known diplomat from another country demanded recently that our State Department repudiate certain newspaper attacks on his colleagues, it was unnecessary for us to reply that this administration was not responsible for the press, for the press had already made it clear that it was not responsible for this administration. That's
funny.
Nevertheless, my purpose here tonight is not to deliver the usual assault on the so-called one-party press. On the contrary, in recent months, I have rarely heard any complaints about political bias in the press, except from a few Republicans. Nor is it my purpose tonight to discuss or defend the televising of presidential press conferences. I think it is highly beneficial to have some 20 million Americans regularly sit in on these conferences to observe, if I may say so, the incisive, the intelligent, and the courteous qualities displayed by your Washington correspondents. Nor, finally, are these remarks intended to examine the proper degree of privacy which the press should allow to any president and his family. If, in the last few months, your White House reporters and photographers have been attending church services with regularity, that has surely done them no harm. On the other hand, I realize that your staff and wire service photographers may be complaining that they do not enjoy the same green privileges, the local golf courses, which they once did. It is true that my predecessor did not object, as I do, to pictures of one's golfing skill in action, but neither, on the other hand, did he ever bean a Secret Service man.
Bean him.
My topic tonight is a more sober one, of concern to publishers as well as editors. I want to talk about our common responsibilities in the face of a common danger. The events of recent weeks may have helped to illuminate that challenge for some, but the dimensions of its threat have loomed large on the horizon for many years. Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security, a challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger, and yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent. It requires a change in outlook, a change in tactics, a change in missions by the government, by the people, by every businessman or labor leader, and by every newspaper. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion,
covert means, that's what you were saying, covet means.
On intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed if we are to oppose this kind of attack as well as outright invasion. For the facts of the matter are that this nation's foes have openly boasted of acquiring through our newspapers information they would otherwise hire agents to acquire through theft, bribery, or espionage, that details of this nation's covert preparations to counter the enemy's covert operations have been available to every newspaper reader, friend and foe alike, that the size, the strength, the location, and the nature of our forces and weapons, and our plans and strategy for their use have all been pinpointed in the press and other news media to a degree sufficient to satisfy any foreign power, and that in at least one case, the publication of details concerning a secret mechanism whereby satellites were followed required its alteration at the expense of considerable time and money. The newspapers which printed these stories were loyal, patriotic, responsible, and well-meaning.
Pretty dry speech, man.
Had we been engaged in open warfare, they undoubtedly would not have published such items. But in the absence of open warfare, they recognized only the tests of journalism and not the tests of national security. And my question tonight is whether additional tests should not now be adopted. That question is for you alone to answer. No public official should answer it for you. No governmental plan should impose its restraints against your will. But I would be failing in my duty to the nation in considering all of the responsibilities that we now bear and all of the means at hand to meet those responsibilities if I did not commend this problem to your attention and urge its thoughtful consideration.
You know,
on many earlier
I can't do
occasions
it.
I have said,
I can't make it through the whole thing.
and your newspapers have constantly said,
this is.
You can have too much wealth.
I love
you
this.
can have too much pleasure. You can have too much food. You can have too much drink. You can't have too much knowledge.
It's a treat.
You can't have too much moral virtue. There are.
But pursuit of it. Mortimer Adler is 76 years old, one of America's most prolific and controversial thinkers. Years ago, he was a founding father of the Great Books programs, and he is still passionately committed to making people think.
I'm not derogating passion. I'm only saying that passion is an indispensable motive power that must be controlled. I mean, imagine having a motive that's out of control.
This
The
guy's
glory
really
of man is his
smart.
intellect.
He was a good
Perfection of the intellect is the highest thing
teacher.
he can achieve. But the moral virtue is indispensable to doing that.
Adler's first love is adult education, and for 25 years he has been leading seminars at the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies, provoking the people who come here to wrestle with ideas of philosophy, education, economics, and ethics, all subjects he has written about.
This bag is a list of all the authors contained in the great treasury of Western thought.
His most recent book is called Aristotle for Everybody, or Difficult Thought Made Easy. I came to Aspen to ask him about this audacious assumption.
Let's start with, as your friend Aristotle would say, first things.
Indeed.
Why philosophy? By your own admission, philosophy bakes no cakes and builds no bridges. Why philosophy?
Because philosophy is concerned with the basic ideas that everyone must use to understand the world in which we live, nature and man and society. Philosophy, as I properly conceived, is the study of ideas and the kind of understanding one gains through applying those ideas to the world about us.
The real world, the ordinary world?
The ordinary world, the world of ordinary experience, the world that all of us experience.
Well, why philosophy then for everybody?
Because everybody, I think, has a moral obligation to make the best use of his mind, and simply knowing is not enough. Aristotle, and you do want an Aristotelian answer to the question, don't you?
Well, I'm not sure where Aristotle ends and Adler begins.
So treat them as continuous for the time being. Aristotle made the point that the mind has three basic goods, just as the body has the goods of food, shelter, and clothing. And so the mind has three goods. One is knowledge, another is understanding, and a third is wisdom. Now, the sciences give us knowledge of the world, but not understanding of it, and certainly no wisdom about it or wisdom about our lives. Philosophy is important, and why I think it's superior to science. Not that it gives us more knowledge of the world, but without it, we wouldn't understand the things we know.
Pragmatism would ask, how do I make money? Philosophy would ask,
why should you? Let me see. The question should be another way. Philosophy would ask, what do you make money for? Is wealth, not necessarily money, but economic goods, wealth, is wealth an end or a means? The greatest mistake a man can make, I think the greatest distortion and misdirection of a life, is a life directed toward acquiring wealth, endless acquirement of wealth, as an end in itself. Wealth is a real good. One can't lead a good life without wealth, but wealth is a means to that end, not an end in itself, and a means that must be moderated, it must be limited. The excessive accumulation of wealth can often be a heavy moral burden.
but is it fair to ask people who are caught up in the mere business of living and of making a living to think beyond the daily criterion of life to the larger question of, okay, what's the end of all this?
Yeah, well, that's why I think the Greeks, the Athenians, gave Socrates the hemlock. Philosophers ask those difficult questions that most men don't ask themselves, and that many men don't want to have asked because it's disturbing. Philosophers are disturbers of the peace of mind that people like to have by not asking themselves questions about their lives, questions about the world in which they live. And all these questions are questions that require the mind to enlighten itself, to gain understanding of the world. And most of us in the modern world are curious, I don't understand this really myself, are content with knowledge, with information, and with not trying to understand what we know. And that's philosophy's main contribution.
For everyone?
For everyone.
Well, why Aristotle then?
Aristotle, of all the philosophers in the whole Western tradition from the 5th century BC down to the present day, is the eminently common sense philosopher. A man whose wisdom is based upon the common experience that we all share and have. There is no other philosopher in the whole history of Western thought that I would recommend as a guide to wisdom and understanding of Aristotle.
Did he have a corner on the truth?
Aristotle? I think so.
He did?
I think so.
Wait a minute.
By a corner, I believe that he in his day, his philosophical works contain, I think, the largest mass of philosophical truth so far accumulated. That was the 4th century BC. I think we've added, in basic human wisdom and basic human understanding, we've added very little to the ancient wisdom of Aristotle. Now, I know that's an extraordinary statement, but I'm willing to back that one up.
How?
Well, what I try to do in the book that I wrote about Aristotle is to show all the wisdom that is to be found in his works, on which there's no, I think, no improvement to be made.
If I'm a farmer in Iowa or a shoemaker in New York, what does Aristotle have to say to me?
Well, he would tell you both, for example. I think the first thing he would say to both of you is that you're artists, which might surprise you. You think you're craftsmen, but he'd call you, each of you, an artist, because the artist is distinguished by the skill he has. And I think the one kind of labor that Aristotle thought was menial and degrading was unskilled labor. Unskilled labor he looks down upon.
But there are a lot of unskilled laborers in our society.
Unfortunately, and I would say that wherever there are unskilled laborers, machinery should take over. The great advance in automation is removing the need for unskilled labor.
But then what happens to the unskilled laborer?
We must give them the kind of education that would provide them the skills to do a better sort of work. They're doing the wrong and inferior. Anything a machine can do, human beings should not do.
Well, doesn't that get to the heart of the criticism of Aristotle for our modern world, that he really is irrelevant to people caught in circumstances they cannot control?
No. It seems to me he's saying to modern society, do whatever you can to remove the need for unskilled labor. And we're doing a great, we've made many advances in this direction. He's making a moral point that's quite relevant. He hasn't solved the economic problem, I admit that, of how to employ the people that are disemployed by technology. But he is saying there's a hierarchy of occupations. The highest are those that use the mind in its fullest. Those which use the body only, as in the case of where men are doing what animals might do or machines might do, is degrading for human beings to engage in. Coal mining should be, for the most part, done by machinery.
What do you do with the coal miners, though?
Find other walks of life for them, better walks of life. We're talking now about the improvement of human life.
But did he say anything or write anything bearing on this modern
Yes,
point?
there's an extraordinary passage, Bill, in the Politics, the first book of the Politics, in which Aristotle expresses the vision of the almost completely automated industry. The words are as follows. The words referring to a Greek situation are as follows. If the shuttle could weave by itself, or the plectrum pluck the lyre without a hand to guide it, then chief workmen would not need assistants nor masters' slaves. And what that, if you understand that passage, is saying, if you had automation, machinery that produced things, you wouldn't have any form of menial labor at all. You do understand, of course, Bill, that I think Aristotle has to be restated in contemporary terms. The Aristotelian texts, if you read them themselves, would, I think, defeat you. They're very difficult, they're very difficult writing, and they're written in language and with imagery that is not contemporary. It's the basic, essential truth that is there that can be restated without any loss of wisdom in contemporary terms.
Do you think philosophy is taught this way in college today?
No, unfortunately. Philosophy has become a highly technical form of scholarship, highly specialized, almost as specialized and technical as logic and mathematics. It is not taught as an understanding of the great ideas. It is not taught as a pursuit of wisdom. And as a matter of fact, the clearest example of what I'm saying is that most professors of philosophy today write their articles and books only for the eyes of other professional philosophers. I think I'm almost alone of my generation who tries to write books, philosophical books, intended for the general public, because I think that's what philosophy is intended for.
Is that why you're criticized by professional
I think in large part it is because I have not been, in their mold, a writer of books that they would read.
You write a lot in here about Aristotle's uncommon common sense. How can common sense be uncommon and still be common? What do you mean?
I simply mean that Aristotle's philosophy begins with the same kind of common sense that all of us have, based upon our common experience. But because he thought more deeply and more penetratingly about our common experience, he elevates common sense to a higher, deepens it, broadens it, and elevates it. And in that respect, his common sense is uncommon.
But do you think most of us can swim that deep or fly that high?
Yes, I do.
You do?
With instruction, not by ourselves. I mean, Aristotle is a master thinker, but he's also a master teacher. And so, since he starts where we start, with common sense, we can, shall I say, with his help, raise our own common sense to that higher level.
Yeah, I like the
In
sound.
Aristotle's view, what is
It's
the
like
most
a
important
babbling
question
brook
a human
or
being
something.
has
Oh,
to
it is a
ask?
river.
In the
That's
practical
nuts.
order, which is the order
I'm
of
gonna use the
action.
bathroom. I'll be right back.
The most important question a human being has to ask is, what is the goal of my living? What should I aim at in life? How should I live in order to live well as a human being? That, I think. And second to that, what are the conditions under which society fulfills its mission. What is a good society? In other words, the question about a good life and a good society are in the order of action the most important questions.
Does Aristotle believe there is one answer to that question? A good life is?
He believes that though men may, each man differing from another individually in a variety of ways, inclination and temperament, may follow a somewhat different path, nevertheless, he thinks the end they should all aim at is the same. The content of a good life is the same for all.
The same?
It's the same. And the factors involved in achieving a good life are the same for all. Let me now support those three statements. First, for him, happiness, which is another name for a good life as a whole, consists in a whole life, from birth to death, so lived that a person accumulates successively in time all the goods, the real goods that a human being should have. Not all the things he wants, which are only apparent goods, but all the things he needs, all the things that satisfy his natural desires.
Wouldn't we have to all desire the same thing for there to be one good life?
But that is precisely what the doctrine of natural desires says. Not that we consciously desire the same thing. All our wants, your wants, Bill, and my wants are different. The wants of every human being differ from those of others. It's our natural desires, our needs that are the same. We all need, let me talk about the biological needs. We all need food, clothing, shelter, rest, play, and sensuous pleasure on the biological level. On the human level, spiritually and intellectually, we all need friendship and love. We all need a good society to live in. We all need knowledge and wisdom. These are the things our nature seeks, and our nature being the same in all of us, what we seek, not consciously, but naturally. And the good man is one who desires what he ought to desire, or desires what conforms to his natural desires.
What if you desire some but not all of those? What if you do not desire knowledge?
Then you're deficient. You're deficient in that respect.
That's very arbitrary.
No, because the good life is defined, and properly defined, as seeking all the things that are really good for you. Now, you're not going to tell me that knowledge is not really good for you.
I'm saying to you that if I don't desire it,
you're bad. Knowledge is good, and you're bad. You're failing yourself. You're stunting your own growth. Your mind, your intellect, Bill, seeks knowledge as much as your stomach seeks food. And for you to deny that knowledge is good for yourself would be as silly as to deny that food is good for your body.
Is this what you mean when you say there are lots of wrong plans for living well and only one right plan?
Precisely.
Isn't that dogmatic?
I don't know why you use the word dogmatic.
I mean, what possibly can make one plan for living the right plan and all others wrong?
The answer to that question, I've already given, I'm going to repeat it again. If human nature is as Aristotle describes it, I said if we do have in our nature a certain set of potentialities that are common to the species, and these create tendencies or natural desires, then there can only be one plan for fulfilling one's nature, living according to nature.
You say then that happiness is the ultimate or final end of all our doing in this life. Yeah. Do you mean that I'm on this earth to find happiness?
To answer that question, I have to step back a moment and say that is a pagan or naturalist answer to the question. A devout Christian would not say that. A devout Christian would say you're on this earth in order to achieve eternal salvation. The kind of happiness that Aristotle is talking about is temporal, earthly happiness. He is not talking about an afterlife. If man has an immortal soul and there is an afterlife, then you're not on this earth solely to achieve happiness here and now. But I said if.
If. And temporal happiness is a life that achieves these
real goods.
Real goods. The goods of the body?
Goods of the soul, goods of the spirit, goods of the mind.
Aristotle says moral virtue is essential to a good life. What is moral virtue?
Moral virtue consists of habits of good choice. Virtue aims at happiness as the end of life and is the habit of choosing the right means to it, choosing real goods and avoiding apparent goods.
Make that more specific for us.
Let me take the most obvious virtue, temperance. Temperance consists in the habit, the settled, firm disposition of forsaking, avoiding, giving up certain very seductive pleasures that tempt you here and now. More food, more drink, more play, more sleep. All things human beings tend to. in order to achieve remote and difficult goods that would be interfered with if you played too much, slept too much, drank too much, ate too much. Temperance is a habit of modifying your bodily desires. Perfectly good desires. You should have a certain amount, but modifying them, moderating them for the sake of the total life.
So, to be virtuous, I have to be temperate in the choices before me.
That's right. You have to be courageous and just. The three cardinal virtues are temperance, fortitude of courage, and justice.
What is courage?
Well, courage is the very opposite of temperance. Temperance is resisting seductive pleasures for the sake of a greater good. And courage is taking, willingly undergoing,
braving
suffering pains and hardships for the sake of a greater good.
Give me an example.
Well, the soldier on the battlefield, the most obvious example, but I prefer the example of a good student. The good student, studying is hard. Studying is very hard. It's painful. And the person who lacks courage shirks the hard work of study. But the good student has the virtue of courage and fortitude, bears up under the pain of long hours of study.
So he has courage.
That's right. Without temperance and courage, one doesn't pursue one's studies well.
What is justice?
Oh, that's a virtue in a totally different direction. Temperance and courage are self-regarding virtues. They are virtues that order my life with respect to my own happiness. Justice is the virtue which orders my life with respect to the good of everybody else in the society. In fact, the most difficult question raised is, I can see why I should be temperate and why I should be courageous, because if I'm not, I may not lead a good life myself. I may not achieve my own happiness. But why should I be just when justice is concerned with your good and the good of society? That's a hard question.
What's the answer? You're making difficult thought easy.
The answer is that justice, temperance, and courage are not three distinct virtues. They are all aspects of virtue. Virtue is one. Hence, you've got to say that a man cannot be a good man, a virtuous man in his own private life without at the same time being virtuous in his public life. And the reason for that is virtue aims at the end. If you're aiming at the right end, which courage and temperance says you are doing, you can't aim at the wrong end by injustice. There's only one end. You're either aiming at the right end, in which case you have all virtue, or you're aiming at the wrong end, in which case you have no virtue. That was the most difficult lesson for me to learn from Aristotle. I used to think, oh, well, I was temperate but not courageous, or I was courageous but not just.
If you're pointing in the right direction.
Some vices. Aristotle says no. You either have all virtue or no virtue. That's why there are probably so few people who are virtuous.
Doesn't the fact that we all fall so far short of what Aristotle says is a good or virtuous lot, doesn't that make him largely irrelevant?
No. Because, if I may now use the closing line of Spinoza's Ethics, all things noble are as difficult as they are rare.
At the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies, Mortimer Adler has found a compatible forum for his conviction that adults ought never to stop learning. He's become as much a fixture at the Institute as the mountains around it. The Institute's technique is to bring together a variety of people to challenge and confront their ideas in an intellectual free-for-all. At Adler's discussion of Aristotle, the participants include America's current ambassador to Italy, the chairman of a large corporation, the president of the Aspen Institute itself, a writer and a poet, a professor of history, a professor of criminal justice, a journalist from South America, a doctor, a graduate student in architecture, a scholar of law, and an emeritus executive of the British Broadcasting Corporation.
Slater?
In many people's judgment, one of the breakdowns of contemporary morals and politics is the attempt to get in the short run at the expense of the long run, whether it's an elected official who's thinking only of the next election, or a businessman who's only thinking of the bottom line in the next period, or the people who would ignore the environment or things for the future. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you or Aristotle would think about the question of notions of the future, the long term, who speaks for the conscience of the future?
I think, by the way, you can treat Aristotle and me for the purpose of this discussion as Siamese twins. Aristotle's concern is that the person who is trying to lead a good life, trying to achieve a good life for himself, must think about his life as a whole and not about immediate pleasures and pains today, tomorrow, and the next day. In fact, I think the essence of moral virtue, as Aristotle conceives it, is always sacrificing the immediate apparent goods for the long-term real goods. In that sense, the long-term point of view is the fundamental moral point of view, and the short-term point of view is not.
Does it really go as far as that? I mean, it's going very far, isn't it, to think you've got to think of your life as a whole. There's another great precept that says that sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. It's not Aristotle's, God knows, but nevertheless, the notion of having a total plan of operations does seem a bit thick on behalf of your Siamese twin.
No, I don't think so, you, because when you are making a film, you've got to think about before you start, you've got to think about the film as a whole. Now, in any of the performing arts, whether it be a concert, a great symphony concert, or a ballet, or the making of a film, or the writing of a book, in any art that takes time, and life takes time, you have to think about the whole, though the whole is never achieved at any time. I think the hardest message here is that for Aristotle, the end is not a terminal end, which is very hard for people to understand, but a normative end.
But you don't think of the end all the time. You think
most
of the
people,
part
I agree with you.
If you're an actor, you're speaking your lines in Act 2. You're not concerned with Act 3.
But the director has to think of the whole. I do think the long-term point of view is required if you take Aristotle seriously as meaning that the end that one should be aiming at is a good life as a whole.
I know that Aristotle isn't saying that to be cheerful and to be contented and to be tranquil and to be satisfied in your wants is a perfect situation. On the other hand, there must be something between that and talking about a man when he's dead as having been blessed. There is a condition of life that I have personally seen in people which I regard as profoundly enviable, to which I'm prepared to give some names. Serenity, I don't mind what.
May I?
Yes, fulfilled.
May I do that before? St. Augustine, in a little treatise on happiness, I think not only sums up the Aristotelian insight, but adds a very good point to it. He says, happy, phrases exactly this, happy is the man who has everything he desires, provided he desire nothing amiss. Virtue is the habit of not desiring anything amiss or desiring aright. So Aristotle would say that in the course, if a man in midstream has the moral virtues, I have to add one more point, he is likely, when he's finished living, to have lived a good life, if he is also blessed by good fortune. The most extraordinary thing about Aristotle is that he's the only moral philosopher in the whole of Western thought who recognized that a life can be ruined by bad fortune.
I like that.
The virtue is not enough. Virtue is an indispensable but not a sufficient, necessary but not a sufficient condition.
That's right.
The most virtuous man can lead a miserable life because he's beset by all kinds of bad fortune. And that double insight explains the relation of society to happiness. Without that, you wouldn't understand, I think, any of the reasons why you had to have a good society.
Were Aristotle here, would he find this to be a good or a bad society?
I don't know that. Could I ask you, you asked the question, you probably had an answer in mind. What answer would you give?
If you mean if...
Yes, if you were Aristotle. Anyone could be Aristotle today. You be Aristotle now.
I suspect that Aristotle wouldn't know what's wrong, you see. I tend to disagree with you in your claim that he is as pertinent to our day as you are. I think that he probably wouldn't understand what the hell is going on. I think you probably have an idea. When, in the history of culture, people lost the way and ceased to be able to find the road to happiness or something of this sort, but I doubt that Aristotle would understand.
May I say, I take a different view of that, Mr. Allen. In no society is the majority of human beings virtuous. By and large, most men are morally, shall I say, of weak fiber. This is not new. The Christian doctrine of original sin may explain this, or there may be other explanations. So that I don't think, by and large, the number of good men, the number of men who are virtuous enough to do what is necessary, the hard things necessary to lead a good life, varies from time to time.
I think he would recognize at least one part of this world and one of the problems of it, what you don't have occasion to mention in your book, but there in the original Politics, there's a whole section on revolution. the study of the causes of revolution. As I can remember, he ascribes to one of the central causes of revolution this lust or desire for equality. Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea of equality is a very difficult idea to get hold of, but so many of the contemporary revolutions, somehow or other, are addressed or have their roots in or...
Don't there's any question about that.
Pardon?
That motion in the world today, not only in the United States, among our people, but among all the people, is, I think, the dominant factor in our lives. And society must satisfy this desire that men have for equality of conditions. Now, there is here a distinction that I make in my own thinking, which I can't find a basis for in Aristotle. The egalitarian, whom I think is wrong, wants flat equality, uniformity, equality in degree. I think that, I now speak in Aristotelian terms, even if Aristotle himself does not speak to this point, that the only equality we can achieve is an equality in kind rather than equality in degree. That is, put it this way, a society should create an equality of conditions that justice requires. No more equality than justice requires. Now, how much equality does justice require? My answer to that one is, the answer to the Declaration, securing to all men equally their natural rights. There are two Marxist statements that I think, curious enough, both in Karl Marx, that state the whole truth here. I'm going to change Marx a little bit, because I think he misstated the first one. He shouldn't have said, to each according to his needs, because needs are common to all of us and the same. He should have said, to all according to their common human needs, and to each according to his contribution, because our contributions are different, our needs are the same. Those two principles of justice were the first one first, because until you've given all what they need, you have no right to make the differential distribution in terms of contribution. If all have what they need, then you can have mores and have lesses in terms of differential contribution. Yes, Mr. Kemp.
You're skirting the issue of revolution that was originally...
Revolution?
Yes. Let me get back to this.
Please.
Let me read something. Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. Quotation. We have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that the privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up an unjust posture. But as Reinhold Niebuhr has permitted us to say that groups are more immoral than individuals, two questions. In the pursuit of the good life, when the majority violates the will of the minority, does not the minority have the natural right to revolution, either nonviolent or violent? How would Aristotle respond?
He thinks that revolutions arise. In fact, he says, as Plato said before him, there is always a war between the rich and the poor. Between the oligarchs and the Democrats, and he thinks that revolutions happen through those natural causes. I would go further and say that when men have serious grievances, suffering injustices, they are justified if they cannot redress their grievances by peaceful, nonviolent legal means and taking up arms to do so.
Bro, like this shit is always so pertinent, man. I've said almost those words exactly. Like, we have the right to seek redress for our grievances, and it seems like people have forgotten. Like at one point, this country was filled with people that understood the human condition on a pretty intimate level. They understood the breakdown between the organized minority and the disorganized mass, you know, the oligarchs and the Democrats. And it's just such a shame because that this guy spent his life advocating for better pedagogy, which just means school doctrine. And he was a great thinker, and his it's a damn shame that they didn't push his ideas of schooling forward, because the guy was, I think he was a great American thinker, actually.
The satisfaction of the natural needs of human beings leads to the happiness of everybody. Are we not compelled by a moral imperative to redistribute wealth in the world to assure that the biological needs of the people are satisfied, at least to a minimal extent, as you said in the book, independently or of any ideological considerations?
Yes. If I understand Aristotle's notion of the good society, it is one which tries to provide all human beings with the conditions, the external conditions prerequisite to their pursuit of happiness. Poverty, destitution, ill health, lack of education, and I think of all the goods that the welfare state tries to provide its people are parts of the conditions, the pursuit of happiness. And a good society is one which will distribute wealth and handle the distribution of wealth to assure that every human being has those conditions. So that if that's socialism, then however remarkable it is, Aristotle's a socialist.
Is it not possible in an imperfect society to set out on a journey and never get there? You start to redistribute wealth in the direction of the people who are entitled to it, and they never see it.
That's the failure. That's the weak point in socialism. You can't say, we will give you the conditions of leading a good life only if you promise and prove that you can use those conditions well. You can't get that assurance from the person you...
I wasn't looking for that. Just how do you get the conditions to? Well, in terms of redistributing wealth, which is not changing conditions, except temporarily.
You know, Mr. Applin, as well as I do, what the provisions and measures of a welfare society are. All Western societies in varying degrees are now welfare states. They're all socialist, not in means but in end. They are concerned with seeing that the whole population, or a very large part of it, participate in the general economic welfare, have some minimal share at least of the economic goods required for a good life. We're all agreed upon that. We disagree when the communists say they will do that by the abolition of private property, and we say we will do it by a free enterprise society which mixes the public and the private sector. We're differing about the means, not the end. I don't think there is a modern society in the West that is not socialist in this sense.
I'd like to come back to the equality issue. I think there's still an ambiguity when you talk about guarantee of natural rights. That's hard to define. And when you talk about equality of condition, that really breaks down into two parts that we often call now equality of opportunity, in which I guess everybody believes, and equality of result. And that's where the revolution comes.
By equality of condition, I really mean what you mean by the phrase equality
of result.
And that's the hard one.
That's the hard one. And then the way it comes now in our present context, in the inequality that exists, the discrimination, the racism, as you've said, that continues in the United States as elsewhere, the obligation, or at least so believed, of government to take some action to redress that imbalance, and that's affirmative action, and that's special admissions, it's the Bakke case, and it's all those questions in which there is somebody pays a price for that, somebody who is himself or herself innocent and does not get the advantage that might otherwise have accrued to that individual. Now, would Aristotle have an opinion about that kind of redressing of the balance to help those who've been disadvantaged at the expense of those who are, in a sense, innocent?
I do not think so. I have to say...
It's an issue he didn't face.
I don't think he faced it, no.
How would his twin face that issue?
The hard choices are where there's good and evil on both sides. And either choice is really an undesirable choice, but you have to make, you are compelled by the state to make a choice. So in society, we often have to redress a grievance, injure others. I mean, there is, as in the Bakke case, is one case in point.
And that is not injustice.
No, not injustice.
You've chosen the analogy of a Siamese twin. I would like to know where you're joined. Are you joined at more than the well? But, see, this is very important because in your book, we get the cerebral cortex. We don't get anything else of Aristotle. And the question is, it's difficult. It's easy to know how he thinks. It's difficult to know who he was.
What would you like to know? I'd be curious to know what you'd like to know about him.
Well, it's interesting. Earlier you said that he wasn't interested in the subconscious or the unconscious.
That notion, I have to say, the notion of the unconscious does not appear anywhere in human thought until the beginning of the 19th century.
Oh, wow.
With greatest respect, you did add that although you are clear that Aristotle had no knowledge of the unconscious, you also said that you didn't think much of it yourself either.
I didn't say.
I didn't know that.
I wrote it down.
I said that. I said I didn't think much of unconscious thinking about means and ends. Let me say, now as myself, not as Aristotle, I make a very definite effort to leave a certain amount of time every day idle, awake, but purposeless and doing nothing, in order to let my unconscious pop out.
Me too.
I found it very fruitful indeed to sit idly staring at the wall at the end of a day of work, sitting down and intentionally doing nothing, intentionally being at rest and
I
idle.
typically spend about an
And then
hour
suddenly,
like that every day.
because the unconscious is there, all kinds of things I hadn't thought about before pop into my mind. Particularly a day when I've done a lot of work. If the whole day's been idle, it isn't purposeful to be idle at the end of it. If you worked hard all day, lots of little things drop into the unconscious that you don't notice. And then you sit back and sort of, I'm usually idle with a pad next to me because the...
Of course.
Me too. Me too.
I don't regard that as unconscious.
It is, because the things that pop into my mind, I have not searched for by thought, by any deliberate effort. All I'm doing, is indicating that I have some respect for the unconscious.
On page 77, you say, as we get older, we become more and more purposeful. We also become more serious and less playful. I think the most recent modern non-philosopher writing on philosophy is George Sheehan, who's best known as a runner and physician. And he has made a very large point in relation to the importance of play if one is going to work in a dedicated manner over a long period of time.
So does Aristotle make the same point.
I missed it.
Aristotle didn't make it in the book because I was not concerned with the parts of life. But Aristotle names 4 main parts of life. Sleep, which is all the biological activities.
Which is also the very active use of the subconscious.
Play, which is the activity which is inherently pleasant, is purposeless in the sense that its end is in itself. It doesn't have an end beyond itself. Work for subsistence, what we call toil or labor, and leisure, which doesn't mean free time, but learning, all the creative acts. And he says play is for the sake of work, as work is for the sake of leisure. In other words, play, the recreational, the reviving effects of play are indispensable. And children, to my observation, are essentially playful. I mean, they play a great deal, they make games of everything and play. As we get older, I think we still play, but we take many more things seriously than children do. And the unfortunate thing is, in my way of looking at it, I think it'd be better if children were serious and their elders were playful. Mr. Lewis.
You said
I didn't think you got all this stuff about play. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important.
I
think you've outlined a series of problems that if we really face up to every day and say we not only have to work through our government, we have to make our own personal decisions. If I got some time during the day, I'm going to want to play.
The play you're talking about is sheer enjoyment for its own sake. Right. I would say such play comes as near in human life to what the religious people call contemplation. It really is abstracted from all practical purpose, intrinsically enjoyable with reference to nothing beyond itself. It comes as near to what the religious mean by rest.
Now, even activity has got playfulness. I personally would much prefer to be in the hands of the politician who regarded himself as being in the great game. I mean, Churchill and Truman and LG and FDR, all these people, they knew what they were doing. And I mean, when you look at Stafford Cripps, with all due respect to a great man, in our country, all you got was earnestness. I mean, not a lot.
Dull, very dull. But
I think we're coming back to whether...
How do you describe leisure, then?
Leisure is like work. In fact, I never use the word leisure except say leisure work. Because leisure is not play, it's the very opposite of play. It's the most serious of all human activities, intensely difficult, fatiguing. It's the opposite of the American conception of leisure, which is having a good...
School means the same thing in Greek.
The Greek word for leisure is the Greek word for learning, you see. Leisure is the 2 kinds of work. Serious activity for an end beyond itself, a leisure work and subsistence work. By the way, this Aristotle, the amazing thing is that he had all these distinctions toward the end of the politics and the ethics. And the difference between leisure work and subsistence work are the kind of goods they aim at. Subsistence work, the production of economic goods, wealth; leisure work, the goods of civilization, the arts and sciences. Mr. Gardner.
This book is called Aristotle for Everybody. Its subtitle is Difficult Thought Made Easy. Now, these are rather controversial assumptions. Many scholars, many educators in this country, and particularly in Europe, in Italy, which I'm currently living, would say Aristotle isn't for everybody. Difficult thought should not be made easy. In fact, aren't you and your twin at odds on this?
I have to say, if I may, that I don't think the subtitle is correct. The thought, Aristotle's thought, is not difficult. what I made easy was the writing. It should have been thought, written in a difficult manner, rewritten to make it made easy. It's the writing I've done.
When you say it's for everybody, it perhaps should be difficult for everybody. When I was a boy, I learned a Chopin nocturne. I can't remember, in G minor.
You sing well, sir, you.
I remember it very well. 14, 12 years old, I learned this thing. And I remember vividly being in somebody's house and hearing somebody, not at a concert at all, play this thing, and I realized that what I'd been playing was a simplified version. And I was deeply shocked. And I was
You know, remember that Aristotle was Alexander's teacher. So, like, Aristotle, not only was he this smart and wrote all these great books, he fucking knew Alexander in person and had molded him and made him the person he was.
on behalf of two people, me and Chopin. I had been doing him down, and I'd done myself down because I thought that I'd taken it in. Now, Chopin is supposed to be difficult. And although the language may be part of the thing, Aristotle is supposed to be difficult too. I speak as one of Mr. Gardner's Europeans.
I think, curiously enough, if I compare Aristotle with either his own ancient Greek colleague, Plato, or with any modern philosopher, let's say Kant or Hegel, he is very much easier to understand.
Would 215 million Americans really, would their lives be enriched? Would they be more virtuous? Would they approach excellence if they read this? And if so, what does this mean for our educational system? Should there be more philosophy? Is the implication of all this that we should build into the primary and secondary school system speculative philosophy?
Not the primary schools. I think that philosophy
and Aristotle is like one of the bases
now taught
of
in our colleges,
Western
which
thought.
is as highly specialized and technical a subject as logic and mathematics are. Philosophy, thus expounded as an extension of common sense wisdom, should be taught in the upper years of high school, the junior and senior of high school. I think children of that age are ripe for it. So I think I'd answer your question by saying this belongs in the high school curriculum. Mr. Ablett.
Well, I think the point lies elsewhere. The most impressive thing in the book, to me, was the inference, and I think I have it correctly, that thinking is a skill.
Yes.
And that thinking as a skill ought to be developed. I am less impressed, frankly, by whether the various theories of Aristotle are right or wrong than I am impressed by the enormity of his ability to think clearly, to think accurately, and to arrive at conclusions that, in a sense, prove themselves. Now, somewhere in the book, you said that philosophy won't build bridges or make soup.
Right.
But let me ask you whether you think somebody who has not been taught philosophy, but has become a philosopher by being taught to think, will make better soup or build a better bridge.
No. I don't. I think, let me say.
I do.
No, but let me say why not.
I disagree with both of you.
I think the difference between the application of science and the application of philosophy is profound point. Science, scientific knowledge, applied science is productive, makes better things, builds bridges, and makes soup. Philosophy is not productive, but directive. It gives us directions for leading our lives and conducting our society. It doesn't produce things.
But when you describe what the good life is, you and Aristotle, you list the good life as consisting of the satisfaction of all these natural goods.
Natural needs.
Yeah, natural
Real
needs.
goods, yes.
Is it not true, though, that the intellectual need is the most important, and that the emotional needs are, in your opinion and Aristotle's,
70s, they
less
just
important for the
beards and long
I don't think
mops.
so, though I think Aristotle would say that the intellect is man's highest power, and therefore the thing most to be perfected. I would say that he regarded love and friendship, which are on the level of the emotions, as a good of equal importance to knowledge and understanding. I think it would be difficult in terms of the amount of time consumed to have a large number of very close friends, because I think friendship is a very taxing and arduous form of leisure work. I really think friendship, cultivating friends and being friends is not easy.
It isn't.
You can't have a lot of very close friends, but I think he would never say you could have too many friends. For real friends, you can't have too many of them.
Are philosophers then the happiest of all men? Because they can use their minds principally, rather than having to divert their energies and time on other things so much as the rest of us.
I want to take the fifth at this point.
Is happiness the same thing as contentment?
Well, as most people in the modern, especially in the contemporary world, use the word happiness, it's a synonym for contentment. But as Aristotle...
You know why I watch this stuff? Because where else can you go and listen to 10 wise old men? You know, where else can you go and get this sort of knowledge or this sort of wisdom? Like today, you would end up with some feminine coffee clutch, you know, like, or coffee clutch. Like, that's, these are the people that occupy these positions in society, or women, like today. And they're not serious at all. And they don't ever say anything, even 1% as profound, or as at least like the sense that I get from it is that everything they say makes you kind of think about things, you know. You know what I mean? It makes you kind of step back and look at yourself and your life and how you think about things. It's almost like a critique on attitude, or critique on one's orientation in regards to its, you know, its orientation in regards to you know, life, how you're oriented in life. And you just can't get this kind of shit nowadays. Like when you see intelligent people talking about working, you know, progress, or like, you know, discovering truths and thinking and discovering, it's always directed in a very narrow bandwidth. It'll be like dating, you know, dating in the modern era. And it'd be like these, you know, a couple of, you know, educated geniuses or doctors talking, and they're both sniffing each other's farts, and they're not actually, you know, and even if they do come, they're just parsing data and like polls and studies and shit. None of them you never see any of them like actually talking about the world and our orientation to it, you know, and how you should orient yourself. You know, how should you look at the world? How should you look at because, you know, we all have tasks throughout our days. We're trying to, you know, earn a living and get some sort of meaning out of life. And, you know, it's a big deal how you go about that. What kind of an attitude do you wake up get out of bed with, you know, and how do you think about your work, and, you know, like, you know, how do you justify that to yourself? How do you uh motivate yourself? Because, you know, life is not one of those things, like, most, I guess there's some people that might have this luxury, but, you know, most people don't have the luxury of just not making decisions and not working. You know, you kind of have to think, and you kind of have to work. You know, you actually have to invest your time and effort, you know, like, it's instead of spending, or you know, spending money, you spend your time and your fucking sweat at jobs and shit. That's what you're investing in life. You're hoping to get money on the other end. You're hoping that it pays off. But, you know, it's important how you think of yourself, how you think of the world and your position in it.
Use of the term happiness, having the meaning whole, good human life.
To think about
it is the very opposite of contentment. For contentment is a psychological term. A man is contented today if he has what he wants, his desires, his particular desires are satisfied. Tomorrow he may be discontented for lacking something that he wants. And so one can shift from time to time from being contented or discontented.
But if he's happy?
You see, contentment and discontentment are experienced. But a whole good life, happiness now in the sense of a whole good life, is never experienced because you never experienced it at any one moment in your life. Contentment and discontent are psychological terms.
But
happiness is an ethical, purely ethical term.
Say that again.
Happiness is a purely ethical term, has no psychological connotations at all, as contentment and discontent have. You can experience the one, you can't experience the other. Well, that's contrary to what most people mean by happiness.
Wait a minute, you can't experience happiness?
No. The point is that in the course of a good life, there are many moments of real contentment, and there's no exclusion of good times and pleasure and joy. Those are essential parts of happiness, but parts of it, not the whole. The great error is the people who confuse having a good time with leading a good life. A good life contains many moments of good time, but the playboy who is out to have a good time all the time is a fellow on the wrong road. He's not going to have a happy life.
In other words, you can have good times and bad times and still have
a good life, precisely. In fact, I would say that on this earth, human beings being as they are, there is no one who has a good life that isn't also a life filled with good times and bad times.
Whose obligation is it to provide the real good all of us need?
The individual has the obligation to do everything he can to acquire them for himself. That's his job in pursuing happiness. But when he's hindered, hampered, impeded by the accidents of misfortune, then organized society must step in and help him do what he can't do for himself. Abraham Lincoln said, and I think it sums the thing up, society, the government should do for the people what they can't do for themselves.
For all of us, for society to organize to help those who are unable to help themselves, assumes a certain virtue that appears often to be lacking.
No question about that. The good society is probably as rare as the good life. I mean, there are both, in most cases, most we have are approximations to it. I would say, by the way, that America, the United States in the 20th century, is a closer approximation to a good society with all its faults than any society that ever existed before.
Why?
It's a
because
lot more
I think
knowledgeable.
it's making an effort to do what it can to provide a very large number of people, if not all, a very large portion of the population with the external conditions they need to lead good lives.
I find, Mortimer, that I think I need beauty for happiness. I need these mountains and this blue sky and these streams. What is the role of beauty in Aristotle's and Adler's view of life?
Beauty is the highest form of intellectual pleasure. Aristotle makes pleasure one of the real goods, the pleasure of the senses. But the pleasure of the mind, the pleasure we get from apprehending beauty is the highest form of pleasure. Aristotle's greatest disciple, St. Thomas Aquinas, defines beauty, let me do the Latin first, as id quod visum placet, that which pleases us upon being seen. As we look around it, aren't you pleased to see this? Doesn't it please you? Not just your eye, but you're seeing something which is more pleasant than the mere surface colors and shapes. And if I may jump from Aquinas to the Old Testament, at the end of the first chapter of the book of Genesis, God, having finished creating the world, rests, and on the seventh day says, it is good, very good. It is good to behold, and that's what beauty is, that which is good to behold.
You bring in the Old Testament and God. What did Aristotle believe about God?
Before I answer that question, Bill, let me tell you Aristotle's views about infinity and eternity, because they have a bearing on his conception of God. He thought there could be no actually infinite anything. There could be an actually infinite number of atoms, or an actually infinite physical world, or an actually infinite space, because for him, the actual had to be definite, and the infinite is indefinite. But he did not deny potential infinities, the infinity of addition, such as the endless series of numbers.
One forever.
Ever. Or the infinity of division, to continue to divide infinitely divisible things. And he thought that time was endless, potentially infinite. Go back to anything you call the first instant. There was an instant earlier than that.
Mortimer Adler.
Come to any instant you think is the last instant of time, and there's an instant after that. And that's why he thought time was everlasting, and the world was everlastingly in existence and everlastingly in motion. And his conception of God as the prime mover is as the everlasting cause of the everlasting motion of the universe. That is quite different from the Christian conception of God. I don't know what Aristotle would have said to the first sentence in Genesis. In the beginning, because Aristotle would have been startled by that word beginning. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. He was startled by the word created because the notion of beginning, the world's beginning or the world's being created was foreign to him. The Christian conception of God corresponds to the Aristotelian in this sense, where Aristotle thought the everlasting existence of the world needed an everlasting cause of its existence and motion, of its motion particularly, not its existence. The Christian conception of God as creator is as a cause of the being of the world. And the Christian conception is quite compatible with the view that the world always existed, because the creator is required to keep the world in existence at this very moment, to sustain its existence. At any moment of its existence, the creative cause is required for its continued existence.
You can be an infuriating man. You can be a provocative man. You can also be a man of charm and a man of warmth. And I'm wondering if Mortimer Adler, the man, is satisfied without a warm heart, or a heart that is warmed by belief, by faith, as a commitment, instead of just an intellectual exercise.
It is warmed by a variety of things, such as good friends, loved ones, a loved wife and loved children. And it's warmed by those things. It's warmed by the beauty that we have around us here. It's warmed by the intellectual excitement of discovery and thought. Beyond that, the warmth you're talking about lies, the warmth of the peace of mind that comes
before the war. We didn't know if Iran really could close the Strait of Hormuz.
Let me put it another way.
And so we had
talked about the seventh day,
how much damage it would do if they closed the Strait of Hormuz.
God rested. I really firmly believe that what I lack is not warmth but rest. That rest is the religious. I think the heavenly, the phrase heavenly rest, my understanding of heavenly rest is the joy that the saints, the blessed, have in the vision of God. That's heavenly rest. On earth, the remote and inchoate approximation to heavenly rest is, I think, the religious experience. So what my life lacks is not warmth but rest. Now, whether I shall achieve rest in my life, I don't know.
No shit. Sam Hyde.
From Aspen, Colorado, this is Bill Moyers.
I think they must have did that maybe before that guy Mortimer died. I've seen some of his other talks, and I really liked him. He did 2 of them on Bill Buckley's show, like the 60s or 70s. They were fucking awesome. But I never saw that one before, and I just kind of wanted to see.
Before the war, we didn't know if Iran really could close the Strait of Hormuz. And so we had a sense of how much damage it would do if they closed the Strait of Hormuz. It's a whole different ballgame when they take out 20 ships trying to pass the strait, and they effectively close it down, and oil goes to $110 per barrel. Then the whole world, including Iran, realizes, oh, Iran's got a lot more leverage.
They have a lot more power.
So now they're like, okay, you thought you were going to wipe us out. Your military was so much stronger. We weren't going to be able to resist you, and that we were going to surrender immediately. Well, that's not what happened. Yeah, their Air Force and their Navy got wiped out, but they still have weapons. They still have drones and missiles, and they're still closing the Strait of Hormuz. So they logically say, well, the game has shifted. Now we have way more leverage. Why would we even take the Obama deal? Now, the Obama deal that they did, you're absolutely right, is exactly the deal that, or almost exactly the deal that Trump's offering now in a panic. The one he got out of 10 years ago caused all these problems in the first place.
What a fucking dumbass.
So now Iran is saying, well, we did that deal because we didn't want you to attack us. But you already attacked us twice.
So now
and you've already killed our leaders, and you've already destroyed all of these things in Iran. So why would we go back into a deal that takes away our leverage? So now we're in trouble because we can't even get out of this damn war, which is exactly what the Israelis knew. They knew that if we got in, it would be a quagmire and we couldn't get out. And that's what they wanted, so that we send in ground troops, have them die. but spend long enough to be able to capture the regime itself and put in Israel's puppet. So this is a disaster of Israel's making and Donald Trump's making. And now the Iranians have the leverage. So I don't know what's going to happen when we put the ground troops in terms of the leverage. Are we going to be able to open up the Strait of Hormuz or not? But I do know that it's going to cost us a lot of good men and women doing that. And we had no business doing this in the first place. And we never should have gotten out of that Obama deal. And by the way, if you watch the Young Turks, we criticize Obama on a lot of things. But on that deal, we said that is a great deal and one of the best he's ever done. It totally ended Iran's nuclear weapons program. Totally ended it. They would send out the uranium outside their country. We had it on lockdown, but it didn't satisfy Israel. They were furious with Obama. They spent enough money buying our politicians until they got politicians who would do what Israel commanded. And that's why we're in the middle of this mess.
Yeah, that was the first thing that Trump did when he got into office was he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, very much so because Iran didn't like the deal. I'm sorry, Israel didn't like the deal. And they said, this doesn't work for us. We're losing our leverage with all of this. So we need to pull out of
Trump's
it. And here we are again today. I also think that people don't always realize the geo part of the geopolitical landscape that we're talking about here whenever we talk about putting ground troops in Iran. And I'm no like military strategist or anything like that, but I look at maps a lot, like I do that, and so Iran is on the other side of Saudi Arabia, which is supposedly our ally, and Iran is huge, okay? I don't know if Americans like understand that all the time, like it's bigger than Turkey. It's what, like twice as big as Afghanistan? And not only that, but it is like surrounded by these impassable mountains on like 2 out of 4 of its sides, okay? Like this is, it's going to be a nightmare trying to send American troops into this landscape. This is landscape that even the locals can't really mess with, okay? That's how dangerous and treacherous that those mountain terrains are. So it's not gonna be good. I don't know what plan they have, and it doesn't seem the way that Trump is talking about things that he has a plan, especially since, he does press conferences and he talks about his Sharpie for 5 minutes, like his golden Sharpie or something. Like that's what we're dealing with here. And we're going to send these kids into a war zone and they're going to be completely ill-equipped to handle the terrain there.
Yeah, last two quick things to back up what you're saying. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, and we couldn't get Iraq under control. And last piece of leverage for the Iranians is time. So they're like, well, this is our home.
And we'll
defend it for as long as it takes, 100 years, hundreds of years. We're not leaving. This is our home.
It's literally,
we're gonna fight forever if you want to, okay?
It's fucking Fortress Iran. It's Fortress Iran. And fucking own the Strait of Hormuz. They don't have to, they could literally just focus on themselves and the Strait of Hormuz, and they could take in buku bucks. For UN.
6 months? I mean, we can barely stand 1 month of oil around $100. 6 months of oil at $100 to $150 per barrel? We won't make it. Our economy won't make it. The entire global economy won't make it. So they have time on their side. They have geography on their side. Hey, but good news, we have Israel on our side who pays for nothing. He doesn't use their troops at all and says that America should do it on its own, even though it only hurts us. And the only potential beneficiaries are Israel. And why are they beneficiaries? Because they would then neuter everyone in the Middle East and they would all be defenseless as Israel acquired more territory. But Cenk, are they really gonna acquire more territory? They're getting southern Lebanon as we speak. They're entering southern Lebanon to take more territory while we're all distracted dying on their behalf in Iran.
Sons of bitches.
This is a disaster. We have to leave immediately. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets a switch.
Yeah, it's getting kind of
totally
late.
not
There's
true.
Not much on. I mean, this just isn't shit on, and I don't have much on my mind lately for some reason. But hopefully you guys learned something or on that Mortimer Adler video, lightning. But I might do one tomorrow too. I'm still trying to get the TTS worked out. Hopefully I can. But until next time, fellers.